Chapter 583. He had different positions in his heart for the magic airship and the magic boat, so naturally his requirements were different. For the magic boat, he mainly focused on transporting goods, so his main requirement for the magic boat was that it could carry a lot of cargo, and he didn't care that much about its speed. But for the magic airship, he wanted it to be fast and mainly used for transporting people as well as transporting goods. Moreover, in terms of long-term strategy, the magic airship had a very important strategic meaning. It would definitely take on more important tasks in the future, so he had higher requirements for the magic airship. He mainly focused on power, safety, and endurance. After discussing this with Evita, Sui gave Evita a clear direction for her research. He asked her to increase the endurance of the magic airship while also increasing its speed. Sui's request for the magic airship was that it should be able to fly faster than a great magician's flying magic. For great magician Camilla, if he used all his flying magic, he could even surpass 50 kilometers an hour. But the magic airship was only 40 kilometers an hour, which was far from meeting Sui's requirements. Of course, Evita said that the magic airship's speed had a lot of room to increase. Whether it was the power output of the magic array or the mechanical structure of the magic airship, it could all increase its flying speed. Of course, with the current development speed of the magic airship, it was still far from being able to reach the exaggerated speed of over 1,000 kilometers an hour on Earth. After asking about the magic airship, Sui changed the topic to another project that Evita was mainly in charge of. This project was magic crystal refinement. Evita had already developed several magic arrays that could be used to refine the magic crystals mined in normal mines and high-concentration magic crystals. These high-concentration magic crystals were already used in the various magic machines that New Flyer made. For example, the magic sedans, the magic armored vehicles, the magic boats, and the magic planes were all used in large amounts. Because the concentration of magic was higher, the effect of the magic array was better. So naturally the magic output was much better than using normal magic crystals. However, there were many problems with this kind of high-concentration magic crystal. One of them was that this high-concentration magic crystal wasn't stable enough, so it wasn't suitable to be stored for long periods of time. Moreover, when it was used, it was easy for the density to decrease, and it would affect the output, causing accidents to occur. Evita's current research on refining magic crystals was to increase the stability of the new magic crystals, and she had some results. According to the results of the latest research, Evita's newly designed magic crystal refining array could already store the high-concentration magic crystals at room temperature for over a month without any magic leakage or instability. This was even more valuable than ordinary magic crystals. In terms of quality, a traditional high-grade magic crystal didn't even have 1/10 of the magic power contained in a high-concentration magic crystal of the same size. To Evita, normal magic crystals could be eliminated because they had a very important problem, which was that they were too big and took up too much space. If they used normal magic crystals, they had to leave enough magic crystals for the cabin, which made the design of the magic machine much more difficult. Take the magic airship as an example. The current medium-sized magic airship was considering the use of normal magic crystals, so the supply cabin was very big. Chairman, you just said that you want to increase the endurance and speed of the magic airship. One of the methods is to expand the cabin, and the other method is to change to using high-concentration magic crystals. The power output is the foundation of a large magic machine, so changing the power supply will affect the entire magic airship. Do you think you can design a suitable magic airship for this? Sui asked. Of course. Evita confidently replied. Actually, using normal magic crystals to leave a large cabin will affect the mechanical design and power design of the magic airship. If we use high-concentration magic crystals, it will greatly reduce the difficulty of this design. I can understand. Sui nodded before asking. Then what are your concerns? Since you've considered this, why didn't you come up with a corresponding solution when designing the magic airship? Evita looked at Sui and hesitated a bit. Chairman, actually, this isn't my concern. Rather, it should be yours. My concern? What am I worried about? He was surprised. Actually, the Magic Machine Development Center and our Academy of Magic are both very strange. Right now, the research on high-concentration magic crystals is already mature, so I think we can put them into production. Moreover, it can improve the use of many magic machines that our company has developed. But up to now, you've only asked for a small part of the magic machines to use high-concentration magic crystals. So, I'm very curious. What are you worried about, Chairman? He looked at Evita in surprise. This is your opinion? It should be the opinion of our Academy of Magic and the Magic Machine Development Center. The technology is mature, but the chairman isn't willing to put it into production, so everyone is very curious. Oh, I never thought that you would care about this. He revealed a smile. The reason why I'm doing this is because the time isn't right yet. Evita, have you thought of a problem? If our company began promoting high-concentration magic crystals, would magic crystals still be as cheap and unimportant as they are now? Evita thought for a bit before revealing a look of understanding. No wonder the chairman has been buying those worthless magic crystal ores. You've already considered this problem. Because I firmly believe that magic machines will become popular on the continent. When everyone uses all kinds of magic machines, the demand for magic crystals on the continent will become very high. The so-called market and price were set according to demand. Right now, the magic crystals are so cheap that no one cares about them. But in the future, the magic crystals will become a very important resource. Even all the countries on the continent will wage war for this resource. When he said this, he was naturally thinking about the oil resources on Earth. Although magic crystals could be seen all over the signs, so much that it made people numb. But when magic machines became popular, because of the large demand, resources that could be seen everywhere would become very popular. Saying that the countries on the continent would wage war for magic crystals wasn't an exaggeration at all. Evita didn't transmigrate from Earth like so of course she didn't know how important these resources were to the countries. So she couldn't understand the situation that described. But this didn't stop her from believing Yi's words. This chairman didn't have a hobby of making irresponsible remarks. Countless facts had proven that Yi's foresight was far better than anyone else's. In the afternoon, Akali swam a few laps in the sea and even built a sandcastle with Freya. Then she laid down on the beach to bask in the sun, completely relaxing for the entire afternoon. Evita and were sitting on the beach, enjoying the sea breeze and listening to the sound of the waves. But they were discussing technology that ruined the scenery. Akali wanted to pull the two of them into the sea several times, but she was firmly rejected by the two of them. She could only pull Steel into the sea with her. When the sun set over the horizon, the light of the setting sun dyed the sea red, while also covering the entire beach in a layer of red light. Feeling the sea breeze that was a bit cold, realized that time had passed without him noticing. So he ended his conversation with Evita. All right, Evita, let's end it here for today. Go back and properly study the problems I mentioned just now. Try to develop the magic airship that I want as soon as possible. As for the other problems, you can prepare them first. When the time is right, I hope that the Academy of Magic can immediately come up with a plan. All right. Evita nodded and stood up with Seeing that Akali had swum back, she took out the magic communicator and pressed a switch. After around 10 minutes, Akali had just dried herself when a magic airship that brought them here flew over the sea and stopped on the beach. Chairman, we'll be heading back first. Evita said goodbye to and Steel before turning to head back to the magic airship. Akali looked at and gave a soft snort before turning away. She waved her hand at Steel before turning to leave. Couldn't help laughing. This stingy fellow. It's already been an afternoon, and she still hasn't calmed down? Steel said with a faint smile. Of course, this is something that girls care about the most, so of course she wouldn't be happy if you say this. Not to mention that she cares about your evaluation the most, and you said that you didn't like it. So it would be strange if she was happy. Helplessly shook his head. I can't go against my conscience, right? That means that you still like girls with big chests the most? Yi's eyes fell on Steel's chest, and he raised a brow. What do you think? Steele revealed a smile. She suddenly came to Su Yi's ear and said in a soft voice, "Do you know why Evita wasn't willing to change in her swimsuit? Because she was shy? After all, a man like me is here." Steele shook her head. "No, I'm certain that she really wanted to change into her swimsuit and show off her figure in front of you, especially after what you said." Su-yi rubbed his nose. "What do you mean by this?" "It's just that," Steele said with a smile. "She wasn't willing to change into her swimsuit, not because she was shy, but rather because she was afraid of hurting a collie. Because Evita is much more voluptuous than me." Su-yi looked at Steele's chest in surprise and swallowed a mouthful of saliva with difficulty. Chapter 584. There was a fire-red magic sedan that was like a flame that came from the road. It didn't slow down at all after entering Su-yi's manor, only stopping when it was about to hit Su-yi, who was waiting outside. When it stopped, the front of the car was almost touching Su-yi's calf. The door opened, and Elder Lasagna came out of the driver's seat. She nodded at Su-yi and revealed a satisfied look. "Oh, not bad. Chairman Su, your courage is considered quite good among humans. It's enough to match the girls of our elf race." Su-yi's face couldn't help twitching. The elves had always been known for their elegance in his mind. An elven beauty driving a magic sedan was already enough to make him feel a strong sense of disharmony. Not to mention that this elven beauty was also racing. Although the elves had stronger physiques than humans, and the Shinfei brand magic sedan was only 60 kilometers an hour, which wasn't considered fast for them, Su-yi couldn't connect the intense and passionate sport of racing with the elves no matter what. Not to mention that the elven beauty who was racing was a dignified elder of the elven tribe. Seeing Elder Lasagna, who had a smile on her face and looked like a human girl, Su-yi thought of Great Magician Camilla's old face. Great Magician Camilla didn't just like racing cars. After coming to the Principality of Constantine, he actually liked surfing. At the same time, he liked driving the small magic speedboats on the sea. He even organized the new flyer guards to surf and race with the new sea guards. Compared to the young people of the new flyer, this old man who was over 60 years old had more exciting days. Could it be that at their level of strength, they pursue excitement more than normal people? Su-yi couldn't help thinking. After greeting Su-yi, Elder Lasagna looked around but didn't see anyone else. She immediately frowned and softly snorted. "Where are Aaliyah and the others? Why don't I see him beside you?" Su-yi quickly explained. "The new Moon Troupe is rehearsing a new opera today. They are very interested, so I asked Steele to take them to see it." "I see." Elder Lasagna nodded. "That's not bad. If they learn how to sing and dance, will they be more popular with you?" Su-yi smiled awkwardly. "Well, no matter what, I think a girl who can sing and dance is more charming than an ordinary girl." "That's good. However, Chairman Su, Aaliyah, and the others have been with you for nearly 4 months. Have you not decided which one to choose?" Elder Lasagna asked again. Su-yi bitterly smiled. "Your Excellency, Elder, I've already told you many times that I will only have Steele as my wife and won't consider anyone else. I admit that Aaliyah and the others are very charming and are very attractive to me, but I won't accept them as my wives. Moreover, this isn't fair to them, is it? Aaliyah and the other 4 elven girls were selected by Elder Lasagna from the Moonshadow tribe. Their purpose was to fulfill the proposal that Elder Lasagna and Elder Lucia had made to Su-yi. They hoped that Su-yi could marry the elven girls of their tribe and deepen their relationship. However, Su-yi was very disgusted by this kind of political marriage. Therefore, even though he was still in contact with Aaliyah and the other elven girls, he had never considered marrying them. "I didn't say that I wanted them to become your wives." Elder Lasagna slowly shook her head. "Chairman Su, Elder Lugia, and I have already made it very clear when we proposed this to you last time. We hope that the elves and humans can work together, allowing the elves and humans to work together better, and you are the best choice for this. You don't have to marry them as your wives. As long as you can marry them and give birth to half-elven descendants, that's enough." Su-yi frowned. "Your Excellency, Elder, this... Why does it sound like you're using me as a stud horse?" "If you want to understand it that way, that's fine," Elder Lasagna calmly said. According to my observation of human society, you human men shouldn't refuse to mate with any beautiful female, right? And I know that you human men are very interested in us elven women. You're no exception. Otherwise, you wouldn't have been impulsive when facing me and Alicia last time, right? Recalling the last time when he was naked with Elder Alicia and Elder Lysania, Sui couldn't help but have some thoughts. His gaze towards Elder Lysania couldn't help but drop a little. The elves had always been sensitive, so Elder Lysania immediately noticed the change in Suyi's expression. She shook her head. I'm already over 500 years old this year, so according to what you humans say, I am already an old woman. Chairman Su, since you have the desire to mate with an old woman like me, then you must be interested in young girls like Aaliyah and the other elves. Sui awkwardly turned his face away. After calming himself down, he coughed and made an inviting gesture to Elder Lysania. Let's leave this topic for later. Let's go in and discuss business first. Elder Lysania frowned and looked at Sui. Seeing his firm expression, she didn't say anything else and walked in. Looking at Elder Lysania's back, Sui let out a sigh. Although they were both elven elders, Elder Lysania and Elder Alicia had very different personalities. In comparison, Elder Alicia was closer to the image of the elves in Suyi's mind. She was elegant, wise, and demure. Her every movement revealed a gentle and amiable aura. Elder Lysania, on the other hand, left a very different impression on humans. Her personality was very strong, and her actions were far more radical than Elder Alicia. After confirming the cooperation with New Flyer, the Moon Shadow Tribe, under her leadership, took greater strides than the Night Song Tribe. Up until now, the Moon Shadow Tribe had already built 3 fertilizer processing plants, 2 rubber processing plants, and opened a garden crafting chamber of commerce. Using the unique ability of the elves to control plants, they specialized in designing and modifying gardens that were needed by humans. Although New Flyer had completely withdrawn from the Lampari Kingdom, because of the importance of fertilizer to agricultural production, the Lampari Kingdom didn't set fertilizer as part of magic machines. They didn't restrict the purchase of it within the kingdom. Because it was close to the autumn harvest, just last month alone, the Lampari Kingdom had ordered over 700,000 tons of fertilizer from the Moon Shadow Tribe's fertilizer processing plants, bringing a huge profit of over 1 million gold coins to the Moon Shadow Tribe. Just this alone had already surpassed the annual profit of the Night Song Tribe. But this was also because the scale of the Moon Shadow Tribe was several times larger than the Night Song Tribe. In terms of profit per unit, the Night Song Tribe's rubber processing plant and tire processing plant were actually higher. It was because of the large benefits of cooperating with the Frestec Chamber of Commerce, as well as the changes it brought to the tribe that Elder Lysania and Elder Elugia approved of Sui and the Frestec Chamber of Commerce. They even seriously considered letting Sui marry an elf girl to deepen their relationship. Elder Elugia's approach could be considered gentle. She only hoped that Sui would seriously consider this matter and didn't urge him. Elder Lysania directly picked Aaliyah and 5 other beautiful elven girls from the tribe and stuffed them beside Sui for him to choose from. Although Sui repeatedly expressed that he didn't like this method, Elder Lysania simply didn't care about Suyi's protests. And Sui couldn't really harden his heart and drive Aaliyah and the other elven girls back, so he just dragged it on. Of course, the Moon Shadow Tribe had obtained huge benefits, so Elder Lysania naturally wouldn't only consider deepening her relationship with Sui. This time, she came here to discuss with Sui how to deepen the cooperation between the Moon Shadow Tribe and New Flyer. After the two entered the room, Sui personally poured tea for Elder Lysania and asked, Elder Lysania, since you have time to come here, does it mean that you plan to cooperate with us on the Strew Roads Roadbed Enhancement Project? The so-called Strew Roads Roadbed Enhancement Project had to start with the Strew Road. This Strew Road was actually a road that connected the Principality of Constantine and the Kingdom of Ruhr. This road started from Suyi's private territory in the west and ended in the Kingdom of Ruhr and the Principality of Constantine's capital, Caracas City, in the east. The other parts of the road were easy to deal with, But the difficult part was the connection between the Principality of Constantine and the Kingdom of Ruhr. Because the Principality of Constantine was originally located in a large basin, the border between it and the Kingdom of Ruhr was actually a huge cliff that stretched for an extremely long distance with a drop of more than 50 meters. If they wanted to build a road from the Principality of Constantine to the Kingdom of Ruhr, they had to overcome this difficulty. When Sui proposed to the Kingdom of Ruhr to build such a road, the Kingdom of Ruhr felt that it was impossible to accomplish. Even the Amsterdam Chamber of Commerce that had laid down over 20,000 kilometers of road felt that this task was impossible. Because there was a drop of over 50 meters, it was impossible for any horse carriages or magic cars to fly up, so there was no meaning in laying down this road. But Sui had proposed a simple and crude method to solve this problem. Chapter 585. This method could be summed up in a single sentence. The cliff was too high. That was simple. He just needed to flatten it. A 50-meter high cliff, for most people in signs, it was a natural moat that they couldn't jump over. So whether it was the Kingdom of Ruhr or the Amsterdam Chamber of Commerce, when they heard that Sui wanted to build a road from here to the Kingdom of Ruhr, they all thought that he was crazy. But for Sui, on Earth with its advanced technology, a 50-meter high cliff wasn't considered a problem that was hard to solve. On Earth, there were many ways to solve this problem, but with the current technology of signs, Sui chose the simplest method, which was to flatten the cliff. Specifically speaking, it was to use large amounts of stone and earth to raise the Principality of Constantine, creating a road that connected to the Kingdom of Ruhr on the other side of the cliff. It was impossible to completely flatten it. What Sui wanted was to create a road that could be used to pave a road. Considering the height of the cliff and the slope of the road, according to his calculations, this road would be 5 kilometers long. With a road that was at least 50 meters wide, the amount of stone and earth needed would be an astronomical figure. If it was with the technology of the Signs continent before, whether it was digging or transporting stones, they could only rely on manpower. To complete this kind of large project, it would take at least over 10,000 workers, spending several years, or even more than 10 years to complete it. This kind of work, other than the will of the country, there was no other possibility. But now with the help of the construction magic machines developed by New Flyer, this project was much simpler. After the careful calculations of the Amsterdam Chamber of Commerce, their final estimate was that as long as New Flyer could provide enough large and medium magic excavators and large magic cars, this large project wouldn't require more than 3,000 workers, and it wouldn't take more than 2 years. If everything went smoothly, the entire Stru Highway would most likely be completed within 5 years. However, although the required manpower and project time had been greatly reduced, the investment would not be reduced by much. According to the estimation, the Stru Highway would definitely be the most expensive highway built by the Amsterdam Chamber of Commerce. The total length of the road from Sui's private territory to the border between the two countries was more than 140 kilometers. The estimated investment was 300,000 gold coins. For the Kingdom of Ruhr, the total distance from the border to Karaka was about 560 kilometers, and the investment was estimated to be 1 million gold coins. These two sections of road were paved according to the standard of ordinary roads, and the estimated cost was also according to this standard. However, from filling in the roadbed to the top of the cliff and entering the Kingdom of Ruhr, the total length was only about 5 kilometers. It was estimated that the cost would exceed an astonishing 800,000 gold coins. In total, this Stru road was 700 kilometers long, and the total investment was more than 2 million gold coins. It might even reach 2,500,000 gold coins. Although the Kingdom of Ruhr would be responsible for the investment of the Kingdom of Ruhr, President Cruz still felt that the cost of this road was too high, and it was not worth it. In his opinion, instead of spending so much money to build this road, New Flyer might as well take a detour. At most, it would only take an extra day and a small amount of transportation. It was far more economical than building this road. However, Sui did not feel much about this price. On Earth, the cost of building a highway was tens of millions or even hundreds of millions of gold coins per kilometer. On average, the cost of building a highway here was less than 10,000 gold coins per kilometer, which was undoubtedly much cheaper. Although the artificial materials of signs were extremely cheap and the quality of the highway was far inferior to the highways on Earth, Sui still felt that this price was completely acceptable. The reason why he insisted on investing large amounts of money and overcoming these difficulties to build this road was actually because Sui didn't want to use the method that President Cruz mentioned. It was possible to take a detour to transport goods to the Kingdom of Ruhr, but if they wanted to take a detour, they had to pass through the Lampari Kingdom. First, not to mention that they had to pay a certain tariff when entering and leaving the Lampari Kingdom. If the Lampari Kingdom banned New Flyer's products from passing through, it would be too late for New Flyer to find solution. In the end, the Frestac Chamber of Commerce was developing the large magic boats that could travel the deep seas and building the Stru Road. It was all to make it easier for the Frestac Chamber of Commerce to transport their goods to other places on the continent. Even if the Principality of Constantine had a pleasant climate and was very suitable for living, there weren't many disturbances, but the terrain here was a bit limited. If they didn't find a way to solve this problem ahead of time, New Flyer would only have a dead end. Of course, Elder Lysania didn't consider these problems. She came to meet Sui this time mainly because the Stru Road project would pass through the Moon Shadow Forest where the Moon Shadow tribe was. To fill in the ground and raise the road, it would greatly affect the terrain of the Moon Shadow Forest. So Sui had to obtain the support of the Moon Shadow tribe ahead of time. When Sui proposed his project to Elder Lysania and asked for cooperation, Elder Lysania had agreed to it. When Elder Lysania came this time, she didn't reveal any strange expressions, so Sui naturally thought that she had decided to cooperate. As expected, after hearing Sui's question, Elder Lysania said with a nod, there's no problem in cooperating. After all, if we can connect to the Kingdom of Ruhr, it will also be good for our tribe." Sui smiled faintly and waited for her to continue. Elder Lysania paused for a moment before saying, "But, Chairman Sui, I have to make a few requests. Please speak. First, the construction of this road will cause a lot of damage to the Moon Shadow Forest, so it will have a certain impact on the lives of our tribe. Chairman Sui, you should give our tribe some compensation." Sui couldn't help but smile. Who said that the elves were so proud that they disdained to haggle over every ounce like humans. Elder Lysania was bargaining with him right now. That's only natural. Only I wonder how many gold coins Elder Lysania thinks we should give in order to satisfy you? Sui asked with a smile. No, pure gold coins don't have much meaning to us, and we don't lack them right now. Elder Lysania shook her head. Oh, then what kind of compensation do you need? Sui was slightly surprised. We need some practical help. For example, because there isn't enough water in the Moon Shadow Forest, it is very difficult for our tribe to use water. Chairman Sui, I heard from Alicia that your first contact with the Night Song tribe was to help them solve their water problem. Then can you also help our tribe solve this problem? Sui pondered for a moment before nodding. Although we can only know the answer after a field trip, it shouldn't be a problem. For example, with the siege machines that our Chamber of Commerce has developed, we can extract a large amount of underground water for your tribe to use. I can even build a comprehensive automatic water supply system for your tribe, ensuring that your tribe members can use clean water without leaving their homes. Really, Elder Lysania was pleasantly surprised. There is actually such a convenient system? That's great. Chairman Sui, I will order such a system from you right now. I can also pay for it separately. Seeing the excitement in Elder Lysania's voice, Sui was a bit puzzled. Was every elf tribe facing a water source problem? Whether it was the Night Song tribe or the Moon Shadow tribe, the first problem they wanted him to solve was actually this problem. As for this comprehensive automatic water supply system, Sui had already begun to implement it on a small scale on his territory. For example, there was a magic water pump under his manor, which was currently pumping underground water into a newly built water tower. Then it flowed through the water tower into various pipes, supplying all the rooms that needed it. This automatic water supply system had been developed for less than 2 months and was still in the experimental stage. After it was confirmed to be feasible, it would be spread across the entire territory. Suyi's goal was that in the first half of next year, every family in the territory would be able to use clean running water. Other than the water problem, do you have any other requests? Other than the water problem, there isn't anything else that is important. Elder Lasagna gave a few more requests with a smile. As expected, they weren't anything important. She just hoped that new flyer could make things more convenient for the Moonshadow tribe. For example, Elder Lasagna hoped that new flyer could develop a new type of fertilizer machine for the Moonshadow tribe's fertilizer factory, which would increase the efficiency and output of the factory. Or for example, the Moonshadow tribe hoped that outside the Moonshadow forest, they could build a small elven town, like a human town. They hoped that Sue-E could negotiate with Duke Stantine and Lord Wine, obtaining their approval. Or for example, Elder Lasagna hoped that new flyer could build a special magic sedan for her. After hearing Elder Lasagna's requests, the way Sue-E looked at her had greatly changed. Compared to normal elves, this Elder Lasagna was more like a smart human merchant. She definitely wouldn't give up her benefits because of the pride of the elves. When he worked with the Moonshadow tribe before, Sue-E didn't have a deep understanding of this, but this time he had a deep understanding of it. Because Sue-E had satisfied all of her requests, Elder Lasagna was very satisfied. After finalizing these compensations, she nodded with a smile. Very good. Chairman Sue really is the best friend of us elves. As a noble elf, I must give you a sufficient response to your generosity. Chairman Sue, actually I can give you a new plan for raising the roadbed that can save you at least 500,000 gold coins and a large amount of time. Are you interested in this? Sue-E was stunned. It can't be, right? What plan could save them 500,000 gold coins at once? And it could save them a large amount of time? This was simply a fantasy. But thinking of how mysterious the elves were, Sue-Yi's expression became serious. He sat up and looked at Elder Lasagna. I'd like to hear the details. Chapter 586. Seeing Elder Lasagna drive the fire-red magic sedan away like a ball of fire, disappearing over the horizon, Sue-E couldn't help shaking his head with a smile. The discussion with Elder Lasagna gave him the feeling that it was no different from a discussion with a human merchant. It was not as relaxed and pleasant as when he talked with Elder Elugia. On the contrary, he felt a little nervous, which forced him to concentrate and deal with it well. However, he was more comfortable with such a method. After all, he had more dealings with human merchants. Moreover, if both sides put their benefits out in the open, it was much simpler to cooperate with each other. It was fine as long as they took what they needed. Although Elder Lasagna gave quite a few requests, it wasn't that hard for the new flyer. But the solution she gave in the end made Sue-E feel that it was strange. This solution was even simpler than the one Sue-E proposed to the Amsterdam Chamber of Commerce. Sue-E's proposal was to raise the roadbed and lay a road on top of it. This was already exaggerated enough, but Elder Lasagna's proposal was even more exaggerated, because she wanted to use plants to replace the roadbed. Sue-E naturally had large doubts about this, because plants were always very weak in his mind. How could they replace the roadbed and bear such a large amount of weight? Not to mention that the highest point of the roadbed was 50 meters above the ground. What kind of plants could grow to such an exaggerated height? However, Elder Lasagna assured him that the elves had a way to solve this problem. This was because when the elves first informed this continent, the largest city of the elves, Moonlight City, Darnassus, was built on a huge world tree. The world tree could withstand a weight that was many times greater than ordinary roads. Although the world tree no longer existed due to the decline of the elves still had many ways to grow special plants. With the characteristics of these plants, they could completely replace the roadbed. Sue-E was very doubtful about this. To him, not mentioning anything else, just the instability of the plants was enough to deny the possibility of using them as a replacement for the roadbed. Even if this special road was built, if the plants that supported it withered or changed, it would destroy the entire road. Because of the strictness of a mechanical engineer, Sue-E didn't agree to this plan. Elder Lasagna didn't insist on Sue-E agreeing. Rather, she had Sue-E think about it before leaving. If it was the legendary life goddess, perhaps I would believe that there really was such an exaggerated road. He gave a shrug. He looked away from the magic sedan in the distance and turned around, but he was surprised. When did you come? 70 revealed a faint smile. I've been here for a while, but I saw that you were discussing things with Elder Lysania, so I didn't disturb you. Seeing 70's face that had clearly become thinner, He gave a sigh in his heart. After 70 brought her private guards here, she settled down in a corner of the private territory that He had arranged for her. She rarely went out, only occasionally coming to chat with He and Steele. The rest of the time, she would stay at home reading and painting, becoming an otaku girl. This didn't match the warm and sunny image that 70 left people before, but whether it was He or Steele patiently persuading her, they couldn't change her actions at all. According to what Steele said, she could clearly feel a dead heart from 70. He didn't understand what happened to her that made her suddenly become like this, so he couldn't think of a way to comfort her. He could only watch as 70 became thinner with each passing day, as her face went from healthy red to pale white with each passing day. In order to find out the truth, he had some of his connections in the Lampari kingdom investigate, but he couldn't find anything. But from the news that Viscount Leslie gave him, he learned that King Eric didn't have any attitude towards 70 leaving the Lampari kingdom with her private guards. The kingdom didn't say anything about this matter, like Her Highness 70 didn't belong to the Lampari kingdom. This matter was naturally strange, but since 70 didn't say anything, He couldn't obtain the truth. He thought about it, and found that he couldn't directly ask 70 about this matter. He could only pretend to ask with a casual smile. Did you come looking for me for something? 70 shook her head. It's nothing, I just felt a bit bored staying in the room, so I wanted to come out for a walk. You should come out more. He immediately said, if you always stay at home, you'll become an otaku girl. 70 looked at in surprise. What does an otaku girl mean? He laughed. It's a girl who stays at home and isn't willing to go out. That's an otaku girl. 70 couldn't help smiling. It doesn't sound like a good word, but it's quite interesting. Seeing 70 finally reveal a happy smile, he let out a sigh of relief. He looked at the sea in the distance and pointed at the back of the manor. Since you're here, why don't we sit down and talk? 70 didn't reject and followed E to the back of the house. They came to a platform on the cliff that E had set aside when he built the manor. This platform was floating above the cliff, and there was the sea below. Looking forward from the platform, one could see the endless sea. It was currently afternoon, and the sun was already close to the sea level. The sunlight shone all the way, reflecting a large amount of brilliant white light on the surface of the sea. It was as if the entire surface of the sea was covered with bright white fish scales, looking extremely magnificent and gorgeous. He sat down in his special chair and leaned back, letting out a long sigh of relief. Seeing Yi's appearance, 70 couldn't help revealing a smile. She learned from E and sat down in another chair. She looked at the sea in the distance and nodded. Looking at the sea from here, it is indeed very comfortable. E, I never thought that you were someone who knew how to enjoy life. E laughed. Of course. I'm this tired normally. If I don't learn how to enjoy life and treat myself better, wouldn't that be a loss? Turning to look at 70, E continued, 70, staying at home all day isn't a good thing. You should learn from me and do something. No matter what, let your body and mind be tired. That way you won't have to think about all those random things. When you're tired, you can rest like now and you'll find that you'll feel much better. 70 was silent for a bit before slowly saying, Are you worried about me? E was surprised. He never thought that 70 would ask this directly. Looking at the calm expression on 70's face, E gave a serious nod. Yes, I'm indeed worried about you. I don't know what happened to you that made you become like this. As a friend, I'm very worried about your current state. I like the 70 who is always sunny, always optimistic, and always had a warm smile, not the current lifeless 70 who doesn't have any vitality at all. 70's lips curled into a bitter smile as she shook her head. Not only you, I don't like this either. But I can't think of a way to solve this problem, so I can only choose to run away. But if I kept running away, it would only make me sink into deeper pain. I really don't know what to do. Seeing the dazed look on Seveni's face, he felt pain in his heart. Seveni's personality was very strong, and this matter could make a strong person like her become this helpless. It could be imagined how serious this matter was. But this was what He found the strangest. For this honorable royal highness of the Lampuri kingdom, what kind of thing could make her feel this much pain and helplessness? If it was because she wanted the throne and found that she couldn't become the king, that could be understood. But He knew that Seveni wasn't this kind of person. If she really wanted the throne, when Lampuri 13th passed away, she would have had a large chance of gathering the nobles who supported her to fight for the throne with Eric, as well as having a large chance of winning in the end. However, she was willing to endure the wrath of the nobles and give up the throne to Eric. This was enough to prove that she wasn't greedy for the throne. Since it was like this, why was she in this much pain? Seveni, do you believe me? Sui thought about it before asking Seveni this with a serious look. Seveni turned and saw Su Yi's sincere expression. She suddenly took a deep breath and turned back. Is there anyone else here? Su Yi was surprised before his heart filled with joy. Seveni was clearly planning on opening her heart and revealing the secret in her heart to him. He turned around the room behind him, and after confirming that there was no one else here, he sat back down and nodded to Seveni. No problem. All right then. Seveni closed her eyes and was silent for a while before she made her decision. She opened her eyes and took another deep breath. Her expression became very calm as she said to Su Yi with a serious look, Su Yi, perhaps you are my only friend. I can't tell anyone else about this matter, but keeping it in my heart has made me unable to take the pain, so I want to tell you to relieve this pain. Can you understand me? Of course. Sui gave a strong nod. Hearing a friend talk about their pain is the responsibility of a friend. But what I'm about to say, it won't be good for you if you know about it. Do you still want to hear it? Seveni asked. Sui laughed. Your Highness, aren't you looking down on people too much? You still have the same problem. Once you're not satisfied with me, you call me that. Seveni revealed a faint smile before falling into deep thought. Her expression kept changing before finally calming down and looking at Su Yi again. All right, Su Yi, I'll ask you a question. Please seriously answer me. Su Yi slowly nodded. Please ask. Su Yi, if your big brother killed your father, what would you do? Su Yi was stunned before his expression changed. Chapter 587. The two looked at each other in silence for a bit before Su Yi gave a dry swallow and hesitantly asked, could it be? His Majesty Lampuri 13th? No need to guess, yes. Seveni gave a slight nod. Even if he had guessed it, hearing Seveni admit it now, Su Yi was so shocked that he was speechless for a while. Seeing the bitter look on Seveni's face, he finally understood why Seveni suddenly became like this, why she was so lonely and helpless. Based on this, Seveni was already very strong, because if it was anyone else who encountered this, they would have already collapsed. This, what did you find out? Sui thought about it before asking. I haven't known for long. Seveni gave a soft sigh. Seveni gave a sigh. But even if I already knew, what could I have done? Sui was speechless. After a while, Sui tentatively asked, never thought of taking revenge for Lampuri 13th? Of course I thought about it, Seveni replied with a bitter smile. But Eric is the Lampuri kingdom's king now, and if I wanted to take revenge for Royal Father, it would cause internal strife in the kingdom. Royal Father cherishes this kingdom the most, and I understand him. He definitely doesn't want me to cause chaos in the kingdom to take revenge for him. Sui, what do you think I should choose? Sui was still speechless. Even if Seveni came from a normal family, it would be very hard for her to make a choice in this matter. Not to mention that she came from the royal family. Each action could affect the entire Lampari kingdom. This choice was even harder for Seveni. Sui thought about it and finally gave a bitter laugh. Seveni, I finally understand why you suddenly have this kind of mentality of running away. When encountering this matter, If it was me, I would also run away. 70 turned to look in the direction of the Lampari kingdom and said with a sigh, if Eric could lead the Lampari kingdom on the right path and make the kingdom stronger, I wouldn't be unwilling to run away at all. But with the current Lampari kingdom, seeing 70 tightly knit her brows, Sui gave a bitter laugh in his heart. 70 chose to give the throne to Eric, and now she chose to run away in this situation, going against her conscience to not take revenge for the Lampari kingdom's 13th. It was just for the stability and prosperity of the Lampari kingdom. But 70 never would have thought that in just a year of Eric's reign, the Lampuri kingdom's internal situation would be this bad, and there would even be rebellions. Was there a trace of regret in 70's heart right now? Of course, Sui wouldn't ask this question. Thinking about it, Sui comforted her. You don't need to worry too much. Although the kingdom is a bit, it's not a bit. According to the information from various sources, King Eric is already trying to break away from Duke Stag's influence and is using his authority as a king. Moreover, it can be seen that he is wholeheartedly thinking of the Lampari kingdom. Look, he has even released some restrictions on our new flyer, allowing our new flyer's products to freely pass through the Lampari kingdom. I think, as long as he keeps going, the Lampari kingdom will definitely become stronger. 70 was silent for a bit before slowly nodding. I hope it's like this. If he can lead the kingdom to become stronger, although I will never forgive him, I will still be happy for the kingdom. Although Sui didn't support 70's idea, he could understand it. Being born in the royal family meant having to shoulder the responsibility of the kingdom. So there were many choices that were different from normal people. In terms of personal feelings, it was impossible for 70 to forgive Eric. But considering the benefits of the Lampari kingdom, she could only take a step back. 70 turned to look at the sea in the distance, and after being in a daze for a while, she suddenly asked, Sui, you say? On the other side of the sea, is there really a continent? Perhaps. Sui replied with a faint smile. Logically speaking, this world shouldn't only have our sign's continent. When our company develops the magic boats, I will organize a fleet to explore the unknown continents of this world. 70, are you interested in coming? 70 finally revealed a sparkle in her eyes as she said with a nod, I'm very interested. I don't have anything to miss about signs. Exploring a new continent, perhaps it's the most suitable thing for me. Sui gave a sigh in his heart, but he still had a faint smile on his face as he said, although exploring a new continent is exciting, it definitely isn't as fun as you think. So you have to prepare yourself ahead of time. Isn't there still several years before your fleet is established? With this much time, it's enough for me to prepare myself. 70 revealed a smile before turning to look in the direction of the Lampari kingdom. This is also good. I'll use these few years to see if Eric is competent enough as a king. What if he isn't competent? Sui didn't ask this question. 70 looked in the direction of the Lampari kingdom for a while before closing her eyes and taking a few deep breaths. When she opened her eyes again, her expression was calm again. Sui, thank you for listening to me. I've suppressed this matter in my heart for several months, and if I couldn't find someone to talk to, I would have gone crazy. Now that I've talked to you, I feel much better. Sui revealed a faint smile. No need to be polite. We are friends. This is what I should do. But, 70, you're telling me such an important secret. Aren't you afraid that I'll tell others? I believe you won't. 70 shook her head with a faint smile. 70 shook her head with a smile. Not to mention that even if you say it, no one will believe you, right? Sui thought about it before giving a self-deprecating laugh. Indeed, he was only the chairman of a company, and the new flyer had been chased out of the Lampari kingdom, so he naturally didn't have any right to speak in the Lampari kingdom. And even if he did, for such an important matter, how could anyone believe his side of the story? Of course, Sui couldn't reveal this matter. This was the most important secret that 70 had shared with him. 70 didn't choose anyone else and chose to tell him this important secret, which was enough to prove 70's trust in him. The two looked at each other in silence for a bit before 70 stood up with a smile. All right, I've finally told you this secret that I've been struggling with for several months. I feel much better now. Su-e, according to your plan, I might stay here to disturb you for 3 to 5 years. You won't be tired of it, right? Su-e stood up with a laugh and spread his arms to welcome her. I welcome you to stay here. You can stay here for as long as you want. You can even stay here for your entire life. Seveni's face suddenly turned red, and she looked at Su. You really want me to stay here for my entire life? Dang! Su-e had only said one word when he saw Seveni's strange expression and understood. His words were a little too flirtatious. Su-e awkwardly rubbed his nose. After thinking about it, he said with a serious look, Seveni, you should know that I've never treated you as your highness, but rather as a friend. Since we are friends, helping you is something I should do, so you don't need to worry at all. Just treat this territory as your home. Home? Seveni had a bitter look on her face. Ever since my father died, my home has disappeared. Su-e sighed in his heart before saying with a faint smile, Then treat this place as your new home. Is that so? Seveni looked at Su-e with a ghost of a smile before waving her hand at Su. All right, let's end it here today. Su-e, I've already told you the biggest secret in my heart. Perhaps I'll keep telling you my little secrets in the future, so you have to be prepared. Seeing the expression on Seveni's face, Su-e couldn't help smiling. Being able to joke with him meant that Seveni had finally walked out of the knot in her heart. Although she might never be able to solve this knot in her heart, with her strength, he believed that as time passed, she would walk out of it bit by bit. Su-e spread his hands. You're welcome at any time. Seveni waved her hand at Su-e with a smile before turning to leave. Su-e thought about it and didn't keep her. Seveni had come to tell him her thoughts today, so she must have mustered up her courage. She looked very calm on the surface, but her heart must be filled with waves. At this time, it was better to let her go back alone to calm down. Su-e watched Seveni leave. When he was about to pass by the back room, he suddenly heard a commotion in the front yard of the manor, like several people had charged in. Hearing the frightened voice of Liz in the front yard, Su-e knit his brows and walked to the front yard with the surprised Seveni. Before they reached the gate, a figure charged in from outside. The two of them looked over and were surprised to find that it was Seveni's cavalry commander, Murloc. Seeing Murloc's anxious and panicked expression, the two of them were even more surprised. What had happened that made him have this kind of reaction? Murloc saw Seveni and charged over. Without waiting for the two of them to ask, he said while panting, Your Highness, His Majesty, he passed away. Seveni and Su-e were stunned. Chapter 588. What do you think Her Highness will do when she goes back this time? Watching Seveni's guards leave Su-e's territory, quickly heading in the direction of a Lampari kingdom, Steele couldn't help asking Su-e beside her. How would I know? Su-e shook his head with a bitter smile. But if nothing unexpected happens, the Lampari kingdom will fall into the chaos that Seveni is most worried about. Moreover, this time, she can't escape even if she wants to. A week ago, the news of King Eric's sudden death shocked everyone. King Eric was only 33 this year. He was in his prime. How could he suddenly die? Moreover, according to the news released by the Lampari Kingdom, his death was because he was working too hard and he died from exhaustion. This cause of death was just too unbelievable. Although King Eric had gradually taken control of the country and worked hard every day, his body had always been good. If he died from exhaustion because of this, that would be too unbelievable. The day after receiving this news, Seveni headed back to the Lampari Kingdom. Even if Eric had killed Lampuri 13th and Seveni didn't have any affection for him, he was still Seveni's big brother in the end, and he was the Lampari Kingdom's king. Now that he had suddenly died, Seveni naturally had to go back to attend his funeral. The more important thing was that Seveni was very doubtful about Eric's death. Lampuri 13th had already died an abnormal death, so it wasn't surprising that Eric had died an abnormal death. This could be seen from the 5,000 sets of military magic machines that Seveni had ordered from Su-e for her guards before she left. It was clear that Seveni was prepared for the worst this time. It was different from when she faced Eric. She had to consider the stability of the Lampari Kingdom before. so she could only choose to escape. But now that Eric had suddenly died, she had no reason to escape and could only face it head-on. Thinking of the serious and determined look on Seveni's face before she left, Sui gave a sigh in his heart. The Lampari kingdom really was filled with disasters. When Lampuri 13th was on the throne, he greatly supported the new flyer. The entire Lampari kingdom was filled with prosperity and quickly developed. But Lampuri 13th had died, and the new flyer had been forced out of the Lampari kingdom, causing the situation of the kingdom to suddenly change. Eric, who had taken the throne, had finally put down the prejudice in his heart and began to open his arms to new flyer. Sui saw the dawn of new flyer entering the mature market of the Lampari kingdom, but he never thought that Eric would suddenly die's death. The day after the news of Eric's death came, there was the news of Eric's eldest son, Prince William, inheriting the throne. At the same time, there was the news of Duke Stagg becoming the regent. Prince William was only 5 years old this year, so of course he couldn't handle the country's matters. So it was clear that the power of the Lampari kingdom fell into Duke Stagg's hands. Seveni didn't have any objections to Prince William inheriting the throne, but she couldn't accept the Lampari kingdom falling into Duke Stagg's hands. Lampuri 13th had died. Although Eric was the mastermind, according to the information she had, Duke Stagg was the biggest accomplice, and he had personally carried out the plan. Seveni could tolerate Eric for the benefit of the Lampari kingdom, but she definitely couldn't tolerate Duke Stagg, who had killed her father, controlling the Lampari kingdom. Before Seveni left, she must have made her decision. Sui could predict that when Seveni returned to the Lampari kingdom this time, there would be a giant storm in the Lampari kingdom. If nothing unexpected happened, the entire Lampari kingdom would fall in a great turmoil and might even fall in a civil strife. Sui didn't care about what the Lampari kingdom would become, but he cared about Seveni very much. Seveni clearly had enough awareness in her heart and had already made her decision. But the situation she was about to face was very dangerous, because she gave up on fighting for the throne with Eric and added in the fact that she didn't want to affect Eric's rule. Seveni's foundation in the Lampari kingdom wasn't as stable as before. On the contrary, the Stagg family was the most powerful family in the Lampari kingdom other than the royal family. Adding in the fact that Duke Stagg had taken control of the Lampari kingdom in the past year, the Stagg family's strength had naturally increased. When Seveni returned to the Lampari kingdom this time, if nothing unexpected happened, she would definitely clash with the Stagg family and the conservative nobles that the Stagg family represented. Those conservative nobles already had vested interests in the Lampari kingdom, so they wouldn't give up on the benefits in their hands. If Seveni wanted to take back control of the Lampari kingdom from them, it could be imagined how hard it would be. With the new flyer's current strength, it was impossible for them to directly participate in the internal struggles of the Lampari kingdom. But Sui still did his best to help Seveni. For the 5,000 private guards that Seveni brought, Sui gave them a set of military magic machines. At the same time, he gave them 100 magic bazookas, 10 medium-sized magic trebuchets, 20 magic armored vehicles, and even 100 magic communicators that were still in the experimental stage. This kind of equipment was enough to greatly increase the battle strength of Seveni's private guards. Moreover, Seveni's private guards hadn't been idle in the past few months. During these months, they often practiced with the new flyer's guards, so they already had enough experience on how to use these military magic machines. This was enough to ensure that they could display the might of these military magic machines in battle, so naturally their battle strength wasn't normal. But Sui could only help Seveni this much. He couldn't help her anymore. This was because the situation in the Principality of Constantine wasn't calm. After defeating Frank-Count and taking over Frank-Count's territory, Lord Wine's strength had greatly increased. The number of soldiers under him had increased from less than 10,000 to over 20,000. After defeating Frank-Count, Lord Wine ceded some territory to Sui as compensation. He ordered large amounts of military magic machines from New Flyer and continued attacking the lords on the border with him. Now that Lord Wine had a large army and large amounts of military magic machines, As well as the large amount of battle experience he had from fighting Count Fran, his army's battle strength far surpassed the other lords of the Principality of Constantine. Once a battle began, they were invincible. Faced with Lord Wine's strength, the other lords of the Principality of Constantine were naturally terrified. Everyone was clear that the main reason why Lord Wine could be this strong was because he had purchased enough military magic machines from New Flyer. So during this time, almost every lord of the Principality of Constantine had ordered military magic machines from New Flyer. These lords were the same as Lord Wine. They couldn't take out enough gold coins to pay for it. These lords wanted to learn from Lord Wine and use their territory as compensation, but they were all rejected by Su Yi. These lords' territories didn't have borders with Su Yi's territory, so even if he obtained a part of their territory, Su Yi didn't have the ability to send people to manage it. Instead of taking this unreliable territory from them, it was better to obtain some more practical benefits. Su Yi's goal was to obtain more practical resources. Although the lords of the Principality of Constantine were very poor, with some not even being able to take out 10,000 gold coins, the Principality of Constantine under their feet was rich in resources. Even if it was a small lord, they would have 1 or 2 mines and various other resources under their name. According to the contracts they signed with New Flyer, during these months, large amounts of resources had been transported from the Principality of Constantine to Su Yi's territory, entering the various factories of New Flyer. A part of these resources were turned into military magic machines, which were sold to the lords. The other part was turned into civilian magic machines produced by New Flyer. Other than the part that was sold in the Lampari Kingdom, the rest was sent to the Kingdom of Ruhr and the Mirando Duchy. During this time, New Flyer could be considered to have earned quite a bit, because these lords were in urgent need of New Flyer's military magic machines. Although New Flyer didn't raise the price of the military magic machines, the prices of the resources they sent were kept very low by New Flyer. In the end, New Flyer could earn large amounts of profit just by selling military magic machines to the lords. Not to mention the fact that they could use these resources to make other magic machines and sell them. These civilian magic machines didn't have any material costs, and New Flyer only needed to pay labor costs, so the profits could be imagined. According to last month's financial report, New Flyer had earned a net profit of 3 million gold coins in just a month. Before this, New Flyer had been forced out of the Lampari Kingdom market, so their monthly net profit of close to 1 million gold coins had dropped to a mere 3 to 400,000 gold coins. This sudden increase of 10 times, it was no wonder Su Yi was filled with emotions. Making money from war really was the fastest way to accumulate capital. Chapter 589. The first snow fell, and in just a single morning, all of Seoul City had been dyed white. Count Samo looked at the snow falling outside the window with a serious expression. Her Highness Seveni had already been back in the Lampari Kingdom for a month. In the beginning, everything had been normal. After Her Highness Seveni returned to Anvilmar City, she calmly attended King Eric's funeral, but she didn't reveal anything from beginning to end. According to everyone's expectations, since Her Highness Seveni had given up the chance to fight for the throne with King Eric, she should support King Eric's son, His Highness Prince William, to take the throne. But Her Highness Seveni unexpectedly didn't reveal this meaning and even vaguely questioned this. Count Samo was vigilant at that time. This time, perhaps Her Highness Seveni would make a choice that would surprise everyone. As expected, half a month later, after Her Highness Seveni attended King Eric's funeral and led her guards back to her territory, she suddenly announced that King Eric didn't die a normal death, but rather someone had poisoned him. This news shocked the entire Lampari Kingdom. When Her Highness Seveni announced this news, she directly pointed the spear at Duke Stagg. Her Highness Seveni announced that she had enough evidence to prove that Duke Stagg had ordered someone to poison King Eric. With Her Highness Seveni's identity as the first successor to the Lampari Kingdom's throne, she announced that Duke Stagg had poisoned the king, committing the most treacherous crime of treason. At this time, the Lampari Kingdom was filled with excitement. The Stag family had controlled everything in the Lampari kingdom in the past 2 years, and Duke Stag had a lot of power. Now that Her Highness 70 was accusing him like this, it was clear that she couldn't coexist with the Stag family. Duke Stag's response to Her Highness 70's accusation was to firmly deny it. He said that Her Highness 70 had clearly seen King Eric's sudden death and wanted to take the throne, so she made this accusation. She wanted to deny His Highness Prince William's right to the throne and take the throne herself. This rebuttal received the support of many people in the Lampari kingdom because Her Highness 70 had chosen such a good time that people couldn't help doubting it. For a while, the Lampari kingdom side that supported Her Highness 70 and Duke Stag were at odds with each other, causing the kingdom to fall into chaos. However, for Count Samo, this battle of words had no meaning. He was very clear that what would decide the final result would be the strength of both sides. Count Samo was most loyal to the Lampari kingdom. According to his original intentions, it was best for the Lampari kingdom to always be stable and peaceful. So when Her Highness 70 gave up on taking the throne with Eric, although he was a bit disappointed, he also felt gratified. However, now that Her Highness 70 had suddenly announced this shocking news and acted like she wanted to take the throne, the Lampari kingdom was in the most dangerous situation. However, Count Samo couldn't blame 70 because according to the information he received from a secret channel, King Eric's sudden death was very suspicious. Although it wasn't strange for Eric to appoint Prince William to take the throne, it was very strange for Duke Stag to be the regent. Not only Count Samo, many nobles in the kingdom knew that even if King Eric relied on Duke Stag in the beginning and even listened to him, starting in the first half of this year, there were many differences between King Eric and Duke Stag. It could even be said that they completely went against each other, going against Duke Stag's suggestions in many ways. In this situation, how could he appoint Duke Stag as the regent and lead the kingdom? No matter how he analyzed it, Count Samo agreed with Her Highness 70's accusation. That's right, it must be that Duke Stag saw that King Eric wanted to break free from his control, so he poisoned King Eric. Then he supported a 5-year-old child like Prince William to take the throne, planning to truly control the Lampari kingdom. Count Samo suddenly had a trace of regret in his heart. If he could have worked with the nobles who supported Her Highness 70 and pressured Her Highness 70, even forcing her to fight for the throne with His Highness Eric, Her Highness 70 would have taken the throne and the Lampari kingdom wouldn't have become like this. Moreover, if Her Highness 70 took the throne, she would have supported the New Flyer. So how could she force the New Flyer out of the Lampari kingdom? In the end, the Lampari kingdom's flourishing magic machine industry was ruined by those fellows led by the Stag family, not improving at all. In the current Lampari kingdom, only Soul City still had a part of the New Flyers industry. This was something that Count Samo had kept with a strong attitude. Although Duke Stag had questioned this many times and tried to steal these industries, Count Samo had forcefully rebuffed him. In this, the one who had played a decisive role was the kingdom's third army that Lampuri XIII had sent to Soul City before his death, who had to be commanded by Count Samo. Lord City Lord, Princess Caroline is here. The City Lord Manor's official came in to report. Count Samo turned around and gave a slight nod. Let her in. After a short moment, Princess Caroline, who was dressed in a pure white fur coat and looked like a white flower that bloomed in winter, walked in with light steps. City Lord Samo, it's been half a month since we last met. How have you been recently? Princess Caroline said with a faint smile. Count Samo shook his head. As you can see, it hasn't been good. Princess Caroline was a bit surprised by Count Samo's reply. After being surprised, she looked over Count Samo before smiling. She looked out the window and said, It's already snowing. You don't need to worry about the Sack Kingdom invading during this time. Snowing can't stop anything. Count Samo shook his head. If there's a need, our Soul City's city guards and the kingdom's third army have the ability to launch a surprise attack in the snow. But I'm not worried about this. Even if the Sack Kingdom wants to invade, they won't choose this time. Yes, They will definitely choose when your Lampuri kingdom is at its weakest. Princess Caroline gave a slight nod. Princess Caroline nodded. If nothing unexpected happens, next year will be a very good time. Samo Count Samo gave a bitter laugh. If your highness can see this, there's no reason for the Sack kingdom to not understand. Yes, our Lampari kingdom is already in a very dangerous situation. If we aren't careful, this kingdom that has been passed down for several hundred years will be destroyed. Princess Caroline slowly shook her head. No, Sir Count Samo, I don't think so. Oh, Samo Count Samo looked at Princess Caroline in surprise. Sir Count Samo, if I may be direct, you should be worried about the fate of the Lampari kingdom, because you're worried that the kingdom will fall into a civil war and the Sack kingdom will take advantage of this, right? Samo Count Samo slightly knit his brows before nodding. Then Sir Count Samo, have you ever thought that if the civil war doesn't last long and Her Highness 70 stabilizes the situation of the kingdom, would the Sack kingdom still dare invade? Samo Count Samo was surprised. How is that possible? Your Highness, you don't understand the situation of our kingdom. Her Highness prospects aren't good. Is that so? Princess Caroline's smile was like a flower. Sir Count Samo, I think that you've forgotten a very important factor. Her Highness 70 has a very important supporter. That is something that no one can compare to. Which supporter is that important? Samo Count Samo shook his head with a frown. That is impossible. No, of course it is possible. Because this supporter is Su E and his new flyer. Princess Caroline said with a faint smile. Samo Count Samo's brows knit even more. After thinking about it, he shook his head again. You think too highly of the new flyer. Although I admit that the new flyer will provide strong help to Her Highness, it isn't enough to affect the situation of the kingdom. That isn't certain. Princess Caroline looked at Samo Count Samo. After thinking about it, she chose to give up on this topic. She came to Seoul City, this time, mainly to discuss the matter of cooperation with Samo Count Samo. The new flyers industries in Seoul City, other than being supplied to Seoul City and the surrounding cities of the Lampari Kingdom, large amounts of them were also sent to the Drake Duchy. In the Drake Duchy, the household magic machines of the new flyer were very popular. Moreover, through the Drake Duchy, the new flyer's products were also sold to the two neighboring duchies, so they were very popular in those two duchies. Princess Caroline came here this time mainly to discuss with Samo Count Samo about moving some of the new flyer's workers from Seoul City to the Drake Duchy, creating a new production base in the Drake Duchy. Sir Count Samo, just like you're worried, the Lampari Kingdom will definitely fall into internal strife. During this internal strife, these workers that are important to Seoul City and even the Lampari Kingdom must be preserved. Do you agree with my point of view? I agree with this very much. But sending them to your Drake Duchy isn't the only choice. I can choose other ways to send them out of the Lampari Kingdom or even back to the new flyer. Su E handed their safety to me back then. I can't break my promise to Su E. Samo Count Samo said with a serious look. But doing this won't make the new flyer support Her Highness 70, right? Princess Caroline said with a smile. Samo Count Samo was a bit surprised before his eyes lit up. Your Highness, you mean? Princess Caroline revealed a faint smile before reaching her hand out to Count Samo. Sir Count Samo, I represent the Drake Duchy to propose a cooperation agreement to you. If you're willing to help our Drake Duchy build a new magic machine industrial base in our Drake Duchy will cooperate with you as much as possible and give Her Highness 70 the greatest support. Samo Count Samo looked at Princess Caroline in a daze. New Flyers magic machines. It had this much of an attraction to the Drake Duchy. It could even make them abandon their neutral attitude and support a certain side. But this wasn't all. Princess Caroline continued. If you agree to transfer a part of the military magic machine technology to our duchy will fully cooperate with Her Highness 70. In the future conflict between the Sack Kingdom and the Lampari Kingdom, we will stand on the side of the Lampari Kingdom. How about it? Sir Count Samo, are you moved by this proposal? Count Samo saw Princess Caroline smile that was as beautiful as a flower and his heart skipped a beat. Chapter 590. Su Yi's eyes moved away from the fragrant letter in his hand and fell onto the face of the envoy. Please tell Her Highness for me that it is impossible to transfer the military magic machine technology. At least it's impossible right now. The envoy revealed a very disappointed look. That really is a pity. Chairman Su, the Duke, and Her Highness have promised that as long as the new flyer is willing to transfer the military magic machine technology to our Drake Duchy will follow Chairman Su's wishes and give Her Highness 70 the greatest support. Moreover, our Drake Duchy will open the market to your new flyer and work hard to help your new flyer sell their products to other countries. With such generous conditions, why doesn't Chairman Su agree to this just to exchange for some technology? The time isn't right yet. He shook his head. But Your Highness doesn't need to be too disappointed. Although we can't transfer the military magic machine technology to the Drake Duchy right now, I can agree to Your Highness' suggestion. We can transfer some of the new flyer's technology to the Drake Duchy and build a military magic machine factory in the Drake Duchy. The envoy's eyes lit up. Really? That's right. He nodded. Other than the military magic machine factory, our company will also build a series of other magic machine factories in the Drake Duchy, creating a complete production base in the Drake Duchy. Of course, this requires the agreement of your country. No problem. No problem. The emissary nodded. The envoy nodded. The Duke and Her Highness will definitely agree to Chairman Su's suggestion. That's good. He revealed a faint smile. After sending off the envoy from the Drake Duchy, Kennard, who had been listening the entire time, said to Su Yi with knitted brows, Sir Chairman, we don't have a way to affect the Drake Duchy right now. If we really build factories in the Drake Duchy, if the Drake Duchy wants to steal the technology, we won't be able to do anything at all. If they lack foresight, then let them do as they please. Su Yi said with a smile. Using some technology that is about to be eliminated to see if a partner is worth paying attention to, I feel that it's quite worth it. Kennard couldn't help rolling his eyes. The technology that was about to be eliminated, that Su Yi mentioned, was like a treasure in the eyes of countless people. There were many people who wanted to obtain it even if they had to bleed. For example, the Sak Kingdom that had been eyeing the Lampari Kingdom, or the Kingdom of Ruhr that was cooperating with the new flyer, or the large and small lords of the Principality of Constantine. Right, speaking of the military magic machine technology, Lord Wine has been making similar requests to us during this time. Sir Chairman, how are you prepared to reply to him? Kennard asked. Su Yi's lips curled slightly as he revealed a taunting smile. Does he really think that if I give him the technology, he can really make a qualified military magic machine factory? Kennard immediately shook his head. I don't think so. In addition to technology, Lord Wine didn't have an equally important industrial system, technical personnel, or even skilled workers. Even if he has the technology, he can't even make the simplest magic repeating crossbow. After pausing, Kennard asked, This means that you're planning on transferring the technology to Lord Wine? No, we have to treat our partners equally. Since we're not planning on transferring the technology to the Drake Duchy, naturally, we can't transfer it to Lord Wine. He shook his head. Just tell Lord Wine that his territory shares a border with ours, so it's very convenient for him to buy from our company. We can promise him that we'll give him priority. Kennard knit his brows. Sir Chairman, you just said that we have to treat our partners equally, but now you're saying that we have to give priority to Lord Wine. This isn't good. Not to mention the other partners. Even in the Principality of Constantine, you've always given priority to Count Anclo's side. He looked at him and wanted to laugh. I say, Kennard, you came from the Emma family, worked for the Walmart Chamber of Commerce for quite a while, and now you've worked for a new flyer for quite a while. Could it be that you can't even give a bit of secret preferential treatment? Kennard could only roll his eyes again. When he heard how righteous Su Yi was, like he wanted to treat everyone equally, he followed this train of thought, but he never thought that Su Yi would suddenly change his style. All right, Sir Chairman, I understand what to do, Kennard helplessly said. But Sir Chairman, I need to remind you that with our company's current production, if we give priority to Count Anclo and Lord Wine, as well as Her Highness 70's request, there won't be much left. We won't be able to satisfy the needs of the other lords in the kingdom of Ruhr, so I'm afraid they will be dissatisfied. Dissatisfied? He gave a cold snort. If they're dissatisfied, then they could be dissatisfied. If they have the skills, then don't buy it. Kennard laughed heartily. He thought to himself, don't be fooled by Sir President's gentle appearance normally. Once he became unreasonable, he was more domineering than anyone else. But although Su Yi's words were overbearing, the problem of New Flyer not having enough production capacity existed and couldn't be avoided. This problem had existed since New Flyer was established, and he had always been thinking of a way to solve it. But it wasn't easy to create a magic machine industry from nothing. Whether it was developing technology, perfecting the system, or even training the most basic workers, it all required a large amount of time and investment. Although under Su Yi's care, the Frestac Chamber of Commerce had already established a basic magic machine industry that could be considered complete, whether it was the researchers or the normal workers. They were far from being able to satisfy their needs. Not to mention that because of New Flyer's strong promotion, the people of the surrounding countries were quickly increasing their demand for magic machines. The production capacity of Xinfei's merchants was becoming slower and slower. This problem was already very serious when it came to household magic machines, so it was even more of a headache when it came to military magic machines. After the two discussed this problem for a bit, Kennard thought about it before suggesting, Sir Chairman, how about we recruit some people from the Lampari Kingdom? That might not be realistic. He knit his brows. Kennard knit his brows. The Lampari Kingdom is already on guard against us, so we can't advertise in the kingdom. Moreover, there aren't that many people in the kingdom who are willing to leave their homes to work for our company. Things are different now. Kennard shook his head. The situation in the kingdom is this tense. Duke Stag doesn't have the time or energy to care about us at all. The citizens of the kingdom have been worried about the situation in the kingdom for a long time. So if they leave the Lampuri Kingdom and come to our company to find a comfortable and good job, it would be very attractive to most people. This is also reasonable. He thought about it before saying with a nod, since it's like this, we can consider recruiting some workers from the Lampari Kingdom. The most ideal situation is to steal all the technical staff from those 10 companies. Kennard revealed a faint smile. Sir Chairman, in this aspect, our Emma family can also help. He looked at Kennard in surprise. Although Kennard came from the Emma family, after working with him for so long, he rarely mentioned the Emma family in front of him. Now that he suddenly mentioned it, it must have been the Emma family who took the initiative to reveal this to Kennard. Other than the Emma family wanting to deepen their relationship with the New Flyer, there was another important reason, which was that the Emma family was also a supporter of 70. Now that the situation in the Lampari Kingdom was on the verge of exploding, the large and small nobles and even the merchants had already expressed their stance. The Emma family had supported Her Highness 70 before, but because 70 gave up on the throne, they didn't do anything. Now that 70 had publicly condemned Duke Stag and questioned Prince William's right to the throne, revealing that she wanted to fight for the throne, there were many people who supported 70 in the Lampari Kingdom who came out to support her. Thinking of this, He gave a nod to Kennard. All right, I'll leave this matter to you. Kennard smiled and wanted to say something, but there was a rush of footsteps that came from outside the door. The two turned in surprise, and there was a rush of knocking on the door. Come in. The door was pushed open, and the New Flyer's human guard, Captain Hart, came in. After giving a bow to Su, and Kennard, Hart said in a deep voice, Sir Chairman, we caught a group of fellows who secretly came from Lord Wine's territory. How should we deal with them? Su, and Kennard were surprised. Secretly came from Lord Wine's territory? The two territories are so close. Isn't it normal for them to take a stroll? What do you mean by secretly coming? What did you catch them for? Just let them go back. Kennard couldn't help asking this. It's different. Hart shook his head. These fellows didn't just come for a stroll. They are planning on settling in our territory. Settling? Su, and Kennard looked at each other, seeing the pleasant surprise in each other's eyes. Chapter 591. When Lord Wine transferred the 240,000 hectares of land to Su Yi, becoming Su Yi's private territory, he only transferred the land and didn't transfer the people of the territory. As a result, after Su Yi obtained the territory, there were only about 17,000 New Flyer employees who moved in with New Flyer. Although compared to the average population density of the Signs continent, this land that was less than 15 square kilometers had over 17,000 people, which was already considered not bad. But because most of the factories in New Flyer belonged to the intensive industry, a factory that occupied less than 1,000 square meters could accommodate hundreds of workers. Adding all the factories and living areas together, the total area didn't exceed 50,000 hectares. This made the rest of Su Yi's territory seem extremely empty and lacking in population. The more important problem was that because of the lack of a large population, it was extremely difficult for New Flyer to expand production and increase production capacity. Although there were people from the Lampari Kingdom coming to join New Flyer, in the past year, there were less than 2,000 people who came here. For New Flyer's large manpower needs, it was simply a drop in the bucket. The production capacity problem that Su Yi had been having headaches about was mainly the problem of population. Without sufficient manpower, even if New Flyer had abundant funds, it couldn't quickly increase production capacity. The reason why New Flyer cooperated with the Kingdom of Ruhr and invested in the Mirando Duchy was to establish more production bases and increase overall production capacity. But the Kingdom of Ruhr and the Mirando Duchy weren't under the control of New Flyer. Although the relationship between New Flyer and them was extremely close, no one could guarantee that there wouldn't be any changes in the future. In order to solve the manpower problem, Su Yi recruited a large number of Principality of Constantine civilians through Lord Wine to enter New Flyer to assist in production. But according to the traditional rules of Signs, since these civilians were the people of Lord Wine's territory, then they belonged to Lord Wine. New Flyer not only had to pay Lord Wine a large amount to hire these people, but they also didn't have the right to manage them. This led to Su Yi not being willing to train these people. He only let them do the simplest work and didn't let them get involved in technical work. But this way, hiring these workers would provide less help to New Flyer. Su Yi had suggested to Lord Wine that he would move a group of citizens from his territory to join his territory, but Lord Wine had rejected him. The population of Signs was very tight, and for all the lords, people were the most important resource in their territory. Naturally, Lord Wine wouldn't agree to Su Yi's request. But according to the customs of Signs, if the people of a lord's territory wanted to move, they just needed to pay a certain price to leave the lord's territory. Sir Chairman, are you really planning on paying for them to move? Seabass looked at the people around the New Flyer's newest magic air conditioner and knit his brows. Of course. Su Yi nodded. It was different from the look of disdain Seabass had when looking at these people. Su Yi had an interested look. It was like these ragged people who looked no different from beggars had some kind of treasure on them. Sir Chairman, the Principality of Constantine is much stricter than our Lampari Kingdom in this regard. Moreover, Duke Stantine has made it clear that if we really want to do this, it will cost at least 100 gold coins per person. Moreover, they came from Lord Wine's territory, so Lord Wine will definitely have a higher request. Seabass added, so what if he wants 200 gold coins? Su Yi turned to Seabass and said with a serious look, if Lord Wine is willing to give me all the people in his territory, I'm willing to spend money to buy them all. The problem is that Lord Wine definitely won't do it, so we should buy as many as we can. Seabass revealed a bitter smile. But Sir Chairman, our company's funds add up to less than 2 million gold coins. How can we buy so many people? That's why we should buy as many as we can. Su Yi revealed a faint smile. Not to mention that at this time, even if we give Lord Wine real gold coins, he might not want them. Sir Chairman is right. Kennard, who had finished talking with those people, came over and took over from Su. Compared to gold coins, Lord Wine might need the various military magic machines provided by our company the most. I think that when Sir Chairman negotiates with him, he will raise this request. Seabass furrowed his brows even more. Although he was the Frestac Chamber of Commerce's financial manager and was mainly in charge of finances, he didn't care about production at all. But he still had a good understanding of the Frestac Chamber of Commerce's current production situation, so he was very clear on what kind of situation the Frestac Chamber of Commerce was facing. But if we agree to Lord Wine's conditions, won't we have a problem with other supplies? That's why, in order to completely solve this situation of robbing Peter to pay Paul, we have to find a way to solve the company's production bottleneck. And to solve this problem, human resources are the most important factor. This is a good opportunity. We can't miss it. Sue, he said with a serious expression. In terms of finance, Seabass, you have to do the specific statistics and relevant preparations. If Lord Wine really needs gold coins, you have to be able to meet his needs. As for the specific production arrangements, Kennard, I'll leave it to you. Understood. Kennard nodded. If it really doesn't work, we can actually coordinate with the companies on the Black Rice Wasteland and ask them to help process some parts. After saying that, Kennard looked at Sue E with an inquiring gaze. When the Frestac Chamber of Commerce made the various military magic machines, from the research to the components, the assembly, and so on, it was all done by the Frestac Chamber of Commerce alone. They never let any other companies or unrelated people interfere. Now that Kennard brought up this idea, it was to suggest to Sue E that other companies should also be included in the military production of New Flyer. Sue E pondered for a bit before nodding. All right. But you have to carefully choose and give priority to the small companies that have long-term cooperation with our company. I'll seriously consider it, Kennard said with a serious expression. All right, let's do that. So he turned to look at Seabass. Seabass thought for a bit before nodding. All right, Sir Chairman, I'll prepare enough liquid funds for this. But Sir Chairman, the second phase of the Strew Road project is about to start. We have to prepare at least 500,000 gold coins for the early stage investment. If we include this, then our company won't have much liquid funds left. If there is any demand, there will be problems, and we might not even have enough to pay the wages of the workers. You don't need to worry about this. So he waved his hand. I've already contacted Newman, and the Kingdom of Ruhr will be ordering large amounts of household magic machines from us in the next 3 months. We can earn enough profit from this to guarantee the company's liquid funds. But this is still a bit dangerous, Seabass muttered before shaking his head. As a financial manager of New Flyer, Seabass had always felt very relaxed. Because New Flyer's product sales had always been high and their profit margins were high, the financial situation had always been good and there had never been any problems. But in the past year, New Flyer's financial situation had become a bit tense. This didn't mean that New Flyer was in a crisis, because other than when New Flyer left the Lampari Kingdom, their product sales had decreased and their profits had decreased, but the rest of the time, their sales had been high and their profits had been high. But in just a year, the Frestac Chamber of Commerce had spent too much money, especially after obtaining this territory from Lord Wine. Because Sue E finally obtained a piece of land that he could control, he began investing in this land. Now in this territory that was less than 25 square kilometers, there were 13 intersecting roads that connected almost every part of the territory. After obtaining this territory, Sue E had also reconstructed the workers' living quarters of New Flyer. Now that they were walking in the living quarters, they could see the beautiful houses that looked very magnificent. At the same time, Sue E had bought a large amount of daily necessities from the other companies, making it very convenient and comfortable to live here. Moreover, Sue E had invited the elves of the Night Song tribe and the Moon Shadow tribe to make the territory green again, making it full of life and beautiful. Almost every person who came to this territory would be shocked by the living environment here that was completely different from other places. Even Her Highness 70 and her private guards were very satisfied with this place after living here for 4 months, even forgetting to go back. But to create this kind of living environment, it cost a lot of money. Since Sue E obtained this territory, up to now, the Frestac Chamber of Commerce had invested a total of 4,680,000 gold coins in this territory. It could be said that most of the Frestac Chamber of Commerce's profits were invested in the transformation of this territory. And this wasn't all. According to Sue Yi's plan, there were many places that needed to be improved on this territory. For example, Suyi's newest plan was to install a complete water supply system for the entire territory. To complete this system, not only did it require at least 300 new magic water pumps from New Flyer, it also required a large amount of water supply pipes. Even if the most important water purification device was the green plant filter provided by the Night Song tribe, which was very cheap, the cost of this water supply system was still shocking. According to Seabass estimates, to build this water supply system according to Suyi's idea, it would cost at least 800,000 gold coins. It was because they needed to spend a lot of money that Seabass was against Su-Yi buying people from Lord Wine. Relax. Su-Yi understood Seabass' worries, but as the chairman, he had more things to consider than Seabass. This is also for the company to earn more profits in the future, so you as the financial manager will have more confidence in the future. As long as you persist, there will be light soon. Moreover, I'm doing all these things. In the end, it's to make other people's lives better, right? Sir Chairman is right. Kennard also said with a smile, Seabass, do you know what those people said when I asked them why they wanted to move to our territory? Seabass and Su-Yi looked at Kennard with interested looks. They told me that the reason they wanted to move here was because life would be more comfortable on our territory. But what I found a bit funny was that what they cared about the most was the water supply system that you were worried about. They said that to be able to drink clean and sweet water without leaving the house, even gods wouldn't be able to live a good life. Su-Yi broke out in laughter when he heard this, but Seabass didn't say anything. He turned to look at them for a while before giving a slight nod. Chapter 592. Actually, if Lord Wine was willing, even if the people of his territory wanted to leave, he had 100 ways to stop them. He could even forcefully stop them from leaving his territory. Because the lords of this world had absolute power in their territories, unless the citizens ran far away, they wouldn't dare go against them. There is no need to mention running to Su-Yi's territory that was next to theirs. But when Su-Yi proposed this to Lord Wine's attitude was different from last time. He told Su-Yi that since the people of his territory were willing to leave, as long as they paid him a satisfactory compensation, he wouldn't stop them at all. This was naturally a disguised agreement. So after some bargaining, Su-Yi finally reached an agreement with Lord Wine on behalf of the New Flyer. According to the agreement, 5,000 people of Lord Wine's territory would willingly move to Su-Yi's territory. According to the rules of the signs and the rules of the Principality of Constantine, Su-Yi, as the new lord, had to pay Lord Wine a corresponding fee of 150 gold coins for each person. Other than that, in order to compensate Lord Wine for losing his people, Su-Yi had to pay 700,000 gold coins for Lord Wine. The agreement was a total of 2,200,000 gold coins. New Flyer proposed using other items as compensation, which Lord Wine agreed to. In the end, it was decided that New Flyer would pay 500,000 gold coins to Lord Wine. The remaining 1,880,000 gold coins would be replaced with household magic machines and military magic machines that were divided into 4 batches. Other than this, Lord Wine had 3 chances to ask New Flyer to help him in battle. This final request reflected the current situation in the Principality of Constantine. After defeating Francount, Lord Wine hadn't even digested all the resources in Francount's territory before fighting 3 lords and winning all of them. In just a month's time, he had completely defeated 2 of the overlords. The remaining overlord was also retreating in defeat, unable to resist at all. He believed that it wouldn't take long for the remaining lord to be completely defeated. This situation attracted the attention of everyone in the Principality of Constantine. If Lord Wine defeated these 3 lords and swallowed their territories, Lord Wine's territory would be over 10,000 square kilometers. He would become the lord with the largest territory in the north of the Principality of Constantine. Even in the Principality of Constantine, he was one of the strongest lords other than Duke Stantine. Moreover, because the population density in the north of the Principality of Constantine was higher than in the south, once Lord Wine of these 3 territories, his territory would surpass 500,000 people. In the Principality of Constantine, he would be second only to Duke Stantine's territory. Adding in his military strength, Lord Wine's overall strength could even be compared to Duke Stantine. This naturally attracted the vigilance of the other lords in the Principality of Constantine. Lord Wine's strength had suddenly increased, and he had defeated 4 lords, including Count Fran, who was on par with him. Then he wouldn't stop and would definitely target the other lords in the duchy. Even, he might challenge Duke Stantine. The power division in the Principality of Constantine was based on strength. If Lord Wine could defeat Duke Stantine, then Lord Wine would most likely become the next Duke Stantine and control the greatest power in the Principality of Constantine. For a while, the situation in the north of the Principality of Constantine became very tense. Correspondingly, all kinds of military magic machine orders were sent to the New Flyer like snowflakes. Perhaps there were a few lords who had doubts about the New Flyer before, but after seeing the might of the military magic machines Lord Wine provided by the New Flyer, as well as using actual battle examples to prove this point, the lords in the Principality of Constantine no longer dared to have any doubts. Because the New Flyer's production wasn't enough, they couldn't satisfy all these orders at the same time. As a result, many lords in the Principality of Constantine kept raising the price. These lords naturally didn't have enough gold coins to pay. Before this, most of the lords used resources to exchange with the New Flyer, but now all the lords use this method. A carriage of normal quality iron or could be exchanged for 10 magic repeating crossbows or a magic bazooka, but now it required 3 carriages of high-quality iron or to exchange. If one looked down at the Principality of Constantine from the sky, they would find a strange phenomenon. From all over the Principality of Constantine, there were horse carriages that were like ants, carrying various ores to the northwest of the duchy, finally gathering at Su Yi's private territory. After delivering the ores, these horse carriages would bring the military magic machines exchanged from the New Flyer back to where they came from. If one paid attention for a bit longer, they would find that on the way back, there would be various hijackings. The New Flyer only took care of the transactions in their territory. They also weren't responsible for transporting the goods. Want to buy something? That's fine, do it yourself. Want to bring the things back? That's fine, do it yourself too. If there was a company on Earth that dared to do something this irresponsible, they would be cursed to death by all the consumers. But in this place, everyone felt that this was natural and no one dared to object. Su Yi saw the caravans that worked hard to transport large amounts of ores to his territory, only to exchange for a few military magic machines, and he couldn't help feeling a bit guilty. Dear, we don't include shipping. However, when the caravans sent by the lords exchanged for the military magic machines from the New Flyer, they were all very happy and didn't complain at all. As for the New Flyer, including shipping, they didn't even think about it. Different from how he treated the lords of the Principality of Constantine, Su Yi's attitude towards 70 was the complete opposite. When providing military magic machines to 70, not only did the New Flyer take care of transporting the military magic machines into the Lampari Kingdom, they even allowed 70 to owe them. It could be said that in the 5 years since the New Flyer was established, 70 was the first customer that the New Flyer allowed to owe them money and give them priority in paying for their products. It had to be known that no matter what product the New Flyer made, they were all very popular and the supply never met the demand. Before this, other people would pay New Flyer in advance and pray that the New Flyer would provide the goods as soon as possible. How could there be people who owed New Flyer? But no one in the New Flyer objected to Su Yi's decision. Everyone knew that this was Su Yi's investment in 70. It was his big gamble. If 70 could control the Lampari Kingdom, the New Flyer would definitely receive a return that was much greater than their current investment in the Lampari Kingdom. The only question was Her Highness 70. Could she succeed? In the autumn and winter of year 3784, in just a short 3 months, 70 used facts to prove Su Yi's accurate judgment to everyone, as well as the power of the New Flyer's support. In the beginning of October, Her Highness 70 gave a speech on her territory. She once again confirmed Duke Stag's conviction, calling him a traitor. She also said that she would punish him as the previous king's little sister and the princess. 3 days later, Duke Stantine released a statement saying that Her Highness 70 was slandering him. Her idea was to deny Prince William's right to the throne and try to take the throne herself. She would announce the king's decree in Prince William's place, confirming that Her Highness 70 had betrayed him. A week later, both sides formed their armies and the Lampari Kingdom's civil war officially began. In the beginning, everyone thought that Her Highness 70 was hitting a rock with an egg. This was because in the year that King Eric had taken the throne, the entire Lampari Kingdom was under Duke Stag's control. During this time, Duke Stag had used various methods to suppress most of the voices that opposed him, and his family's strength had greatly increased. As for Her Highness 70, she had completely disappeared in this year. Not only were the nobles that supported her forced to change sides, she even took the initiative to disperse some of her personal guards. The difference in strength between the two sides was naturally like heaven and earth. However, when the Lampari Kingdom's civil war officially began, the facts exceeded everyone's expectations. First, after Her Highness 70 made the announcement, close to half of the cities in the Lampari Kingdom expressed their support for Her Highness 70. Compared to half of the cities that supported King William and Duke Stag, and most of the cities that didn't express their stance and remained neutral, Her Highness 70's momentum was much bigger. When 70's personal guards clashed with the kingdom's second army that Duke Stag sent out, the results shocked everyone. The 2nd Regiment of the Lampuri Kingdom's army, that was only second to the 1st Regiment of the kingdom's garrison army, couldn't fight back at all. The kingdom's 2nd Army had 15,000 people, and 70's private guards only had 3,000 people. This shocking result made everyone feel that it was unbelievable. Why did 70's personal guards have such shocking battle strength? Was it just because they were equipped with the military magic machines from New Flyer? Chapter 593. The Lampari Kingdom's civil war was something that everyone couldn't understand. According to the estimates of most people, once the Lampari Kingdom's civil war broke out, it would be a stalemate that would take a long time. Moreover, most people thought that Duke Stag's side had more power than Her Highness 70's side. So if they fought, it was clear that Duke Stag's side would have the advantage. But the actual result was that since the Lampari Kingdom's civil war broke out in October, in less than 2 months, Her Highness 70's private guards had attacked Anvilmar City. Although Duke Stag had reacted quickly and left Anvilmar City ahead of time with His Highness William, returning to the Stag family's territory, saying that he would fight Her Highness 70 to the end, everyone could see that Duke Stag didn't have any chance of fighting back. Because as Her Highness 70's fierce attacks pushed forward step by step, there were more and more cities in the Lampuri Kingdom that supported Her Highness 70. When Her Highness 70 attacked Anvilmar City, and with Count Samo as the representative, she controlled Anvilmar City with the support of the Lampari Kingdom's royal family. Over 3/4 of the Lampari Kingdom's cities supported Her Highness 70. In just 2 months, the situation in the Lampari Kingdom had reversed. If it wasn't for the fact that it was winter and it wasn't convenient to send troops, everyone believed that Her Highness 70 would have chased them down and attacked the Stag family's territory, taking care of all the opposing forces in the kingdom. Although I expected this result, I never expected this process. Leslie gave a bitter laugh and shook his head. Leslie shook his head with a bitter smile. I never thought that after Her Highness 70 received the support of your company, her battle strength would become this strong. I've personally witnessed a battle between the two sides, and that scene. It couldn't be considered a battle at all. Rather, it was a one-sided slaughter. So, Sue, he looked at Leslie with a bit of amusement. You saw that the situation was bad, so you ran to my place ahead of time? I have to remind you, as a direct relative of the Stag family, you are a convicted traitor. If you stay here, it'll be considered as me harboring a traitor. Che, are you scared? Leslie rolled her eyes at Sue. You are now Her Highness' greatest servant. Even if you harbor 1 or 2 traitors, I believe Her Highness won't really do anything to you. Then again, I've already been driven out of the family by my Lord Father, so I'm no longer related to the Stag family. If I really want to catch you, do you really think you can get away with it? He waved his hand. All right, let's stop joking. Are you planning to go out to sea this time? But our magic boats are still far from being finished. I'm afraid we can't satisfy your request. No, I'm planning to buy some military magic machines from you this time, Leslie said. He knit his brows, and after thinking for a bit, he said in a deep voice, Leslie, although we are friends, if you want me to support Duke Stagg, I can only say sorry. You're mistaken. Leslie slowly shook his head and said with a sigh, Lord Father's fate has already been decided. I can't change it, and I'm not interested in changing it. Since he had chosen this path, he should be the one to bear the consequences. Right now, I just want to keep his life. He was stunned. This might not be possible, right? In this situation, could it be that you're still hoping that the Lord Duke can keep his life after being defeated? I'm not certain, but as his son, I can only do my best to give it a try. Leslie gave a sigh. After hesitating a bit, he looked at Sue-E with a pleading look as he sincerely said, Sue-E, you have a good relationship with Her Highness 70, and your new flyer was the most important factor in her winning the Civil War. If you speak up, I think she will at least give you some face. He couldn't help giving a bitter laugh in his heart. If it was anything else, he was 90% certain that as long as he spoke up, 70 would agree. But Duke Stagg's crime was treason, and he had participated in the poisoning of Lampury 13th, as well as killing King Eric himself. This kind of treason that couldn't be forgiven. Even if 70 was benevolent, it was impossible for her to forgive him. However, this was Leslie's first time lowering himself in front of him after knowing him for so long. Although he thought it was impossible, he still nodded to show that he would do his best. Actually, I also know that I'm just hoping. But this is something I should do, and as for the result, I can only let it be. Leslie gave a sigh and closed his eyes to think for a bit before saying goodbye to Sue. After sending Leslie off, Sue-E came to another room and saw the messenger 70 had sent who had been waiting for him. Chairman Sue, if I'm not wrong, the person who just left was Viscount Leslie, right? The messenger looked at the manor's gate with a frown before asking Sue, He is Duke Stagg's son. Why didn't you immediately send him to Her Highness? This is a great merit. Sue-Yi's face turned cold. He has already cut ties with the Stagg family. Other than that, he is my friend. The messenger wanted to say something else, but seeing Sue-Yi's expression, he gave two dry laughs and didn't dare mention this topic. If it was said that everyone thought that Sue-E and Her Highness 70 were close because Her Highness 70 cared about the new magic machine industry represented by the Shinfei Chamber of Commerce, then after the Lampury Kingdom's civil war broke out, everyone found that the reason why New Flyer and Sue-E received Her Highness 70's attention was because they had this kind of strength and were worthy of this attention. The reason why Her Highness 70's army could have such terrifying battle strength in the Civil War was mainly because of the support of New Flyer. So as Her Highness 70 led her army forward, Sue-E and the New Flyer's prestige in the Lampury Kingdom quickly increased. It was different from before, when everyone's impression of the Frestech Chamber of Commerce was that they could produce all kinds of household magic machines. This time, everyone's impression of the Frestech Chamber of Commerce was more focused on the military magic machines that had endless might on the battlefield. Because of this impression, Sue-E as the chairman of New Flyer gradually became more dignified in everyone's hearts, even becoming a bit terrifying. This messenger was sent by 70 to keep in contact with Sue-E, so naturally, he knew how important New Flyer was to Her Highness 70. He also knew that Her Highness 70 treated Sue-E differently from others, so of course he didn't dare act arrogant in front of Sue-E. So he could only watch as Leslie walked to the side of a magic sedan. He watched as this piece of fat meat entered the magic sedan and drove off, not daring to make a single sound. Seeing Leslie's magic sedan disappear into the distance, Sue-E turned to look at the messenger. Her Highness sent you here because there's a change in the next step of the plan? The messenger quickly nodded. Yes. Her Highness wanted to discuss this with you personally, but there are many important matters in the kingdom to take care of right now, and she can't leave, so she sent me to give you a general idea. She definitely can't leave now. He nodded. He nodded. If my guesses aren't wrong, Her Highness should be planning on having our new flyer move back to the Lampari Kingdom, right? The messenger looked at Sue in surprise before loudly praising. Chairman Sue, you really are wise. That's right, this is Her Highness meaning. Her Highness said that she hopes that new flyer can develop in the kingdom like before, working hard for the prosperity of the Lampari Kingdom. Her Highness also said that she will fully support your new flyer's plans in the kingdom. She definitely won't let you and new flyer be hindered in any way. Is that so? He revealed a smile as he looked in the direction of the Lampari Kingdom. Of course, he believed in 70's sincerity and believed that 70 would fully support new flyers' development in the Lampari Kingdom. He didn't have any objections to this, but there was a difference. This difference was that when new flyer was still in the Lampari Kingdom, they treated the Lampari Kingdom as their foundation. All their development plans were based on making the Lampari Kingdom stronger and more prosperous. But now that they had left the Lampari Kingdom and established themselves in the Principality of Constantine, Suyi's plans had undergone a large change. Although he would follow 70's wishes to have new flyer invest in the Lampari Kingdom and develop the magic machine industry in the Lampari Kingdom, he wouldn't treat the Lampari Kingdom as their foundation. Because right now, New Flyer's foundation could only be on Suyi's private territory. In Suyi's mind, he would treat the Lampari Kingdom as a market no different from the Kingdom of Ruhr, the Mirando Duchy, the Drake Duchy, and the other countries on the continent. At most, because of his relationship with 70, he would pay more attention to the Lampari Kingdom. But it was impossible for him to fully consider the development of the Lampari Kingdom like before. The Lampari Kingdom had already lost the chance for him to fully work for it. Did 70 know about this? Chapter 594. In the final month of year 3874 of the continent, the situation in the Lampuri Kingdom had taken a shocking change. December 3rd, Duke Stagg suddenly made a public announcement to submit to Her Highness 70. He acknowledged Her Highness 70's right to the throne and supported her as the next queen of the Lampari Kingdom. December 8th, Her Highness 70 led her private guards into the Stagg family's territory and accepted Duke Stagg's surrender. December 9th, Duke Stagg was found to have committed suicide by taking poison in his bedroom. On the 10th of December, Her Highness 70 announced that Duke Stagg's crimes couldn't be forgiven. The Stagg family had participated in the rebellion and had also committed a large crime. But because of the contributions the Stagg family had made to the Lampuri Kingdom, she decided to forgive some of the Stagg family's crimes. After half a month of trial, the Kingdom Parliament decided that 11 leaders of the Stagg family, including Duke Stagg and some of the nobles who participated in the rebellion, were guilty of treason and were sentenced to death. The Kingdom Parliament also confiscated most of the territories of the nobles who participated in the rebellion led by the Stagg family. But to everyone's surprise, they didn't put these families to death. Rather, they left some of their bloodlines, allowing them to maintain the bloodlines of their families. The Kingdom Parliament even left some territories and industries for these families, guaranteeing that even if they couldn't live like before, they wouldn't have to worry about food and clothing, and their living conditions would far surpass that of normal citizens. This kind of ending was already very good for these families who participated in the rebellion. So in the Lampari Kingdom, many people praised Her Highness 70's benevolence. There were even newspapers that declared Her Highness 70 to be the most benevolent queen in the history of the Lampari Kingdom. Her Highness 70 would definitely lead the Lampari Kingdom to quickly become stronger. Of course, there were some people who disapproved of 70's benevolence towards the rebels. He was one of them. Although preserving the bloodlines of the nobles is a benevolent method, isn't this giving them the chance to take revenge in the future? He looked at the red invitation in his hand and knit his brows as he spoke to the messenger sent by 70. Does your highness not understand this? The emissary smiled and replied, Of course your highness understands this, but your highness is only accepting this condition in consideration of the stability of the kingdom. I knew it was this reason. He gave a shrug, showing that he understood. Actually, it wasn't that he couldn't understand 70's actions. If 70 was given enough time and conditions, Su-yi believed that no matter how kind and benevolent she was, she definitely wouldn't show mercy to the nobles who rebelled. This was not a personal grudge, but a matter that concerned the survival of the entire Lampari kingdom. There was no room for mercy. 70 did this, without a doubt, to pacify the Lampari kingdom's internal strife as soon as possible, letting the Lampari kingdom suffer the smallest losses. This would prevent them from being injured and allowing others to take advantage of the situation. According to the reports, the Sak kingdom had been strengthening their army on the northern border, clearly eyeing the Lampari kingdom like a tiger watching its prey. If the Lampari kingdom's internal strife lasted for too long, causing the kingdom to fall into chaos and their national strength to fall, the Sak kingdom would definitely choose to invade without any hesitation. If this really happened, the Lampari kingdom would be in danger. It was because of this that 70 chose to negotiate with Duke Stag's side when she had the absolute advantage, finally accepting the surrender with some generous conditions. Although this would leave some hidden dangers in the Lampari kingdom, compared to the current crisis the kingdom was facing, it wasn't worth mentioning. Seeing that Su-yi seemed to have come back from his thoughts, the emissary quickly pointed at the beautiful invitation in Su-yi's hand and carefully said, "Chairman Su, since you've already seen this invitation, then please come to Anvilmar City. Her Highness will definitely be happy to see you." Su-yi lowered his head to look at the invitation in his hand. This invitation invited Su-yi to come to the Lampari Kingdom's capital, Anvilmar City, on the 25th of December, the day of the birth of a god. He would participate in Her Highness 70's coronation and personally witness Her Highness 70 becoming the new queen of the Lampari Kingdom. Whether it was because of the relationship between 70 and Su-yi or because of the new flyer's support for 70, it was natural for 70 to invite Su-yi. Moreover, New Flyer had contributed greatly to 70 calming the kingdom's internal strife, so Su-yi could even be considered one of the final guests at the coronation. However, after Su-yi thought about it, he shook his head. "No, this is Her Majesty's coronation. A normal merchant like me isn't qualified to participate." The messenger was surprised before quickly waving his hand. No. Chairman Su, you're an honored guest personally invited by Her Highness. How could you not be qualified? Look, the signature on the invitation card was personally written by His Highness. Other than you, there are less than 10 other invitations that have Her Highness' signature, so it can be seen how important you are in Her Highness' heart. If you aren't qualified to participate, there are many people who aren't qualified to participate. Su-yi revealed a smile before shaking his head. Please tell Her Highness for me that although I really want to personally see her ascend the throne, I really can't find the time that day. Please tell her that I'm sorry for me. The messenger knit his brows. Chairman Su, what matter do you have that is more important than attending Her Majesty's coronation? Su-yi looked at him and calmly said, "This isn't related to you." The messenger was stunned and his heart was filled with anger. But thinking of Her Highness 70's orders, he could only endure it and keep persuading Su-yi. However, Su-yi seemed to have made up his mind. No matter what he said, he wouldn't agree. Seeing Su-yi's firm will, the messenger was helpless in the end. He could only give a long sigh. Chairman Su, Her Highness hopes that you can witness her coronation. She told me that without your support and encouragement, she wouldn't have become the queen of the Lampari Kingdom. That's why she really hopes to ascend to the throne under your watch. If you don't go, she will be very disappointed. I've said it before, I also hope to personally witness this great moment. But Su-yi suddenly knit his brows. After thinking about it, he gave a sigh and continued. All right, I won't say any useless lies. Tell Her Highness for me that the reason I'm not willing to attend her coronation is because I feel that once she becomes the queen, I want to be a good friend like her. If I don't go, I can lie to myself. The messenger looked at Su-yi in surprise. From Su-yi's words, he could tell that the relationship between Su-yi and Her Highness 70 was much deeper than he thought. Otherwise, Su-yi definitely wouldn't have this emotional feeling. Thinking of Her Highness' expression when she mentioned Su-yi, the messenger suddenly had a look of shock on his face. Could it be? Her Highness and Su-yi had a relationship that surpassed friendship. Su-yi didn't know that the messenger's thoughts had already wandered far. After pausing, he said with a serious look, "Other than that, tell Her Highness for me. Tell her that no matter what, my support for her won't change. Our new flyer's support for the Lampari Kingdom won't change either. When the kingdom's situation stabilizes, we will have many chances to meet in the future, so she doesn't need to be too disappointed." The messenger looked at Su-yi with a strange look and didn't keep persuading him. After discussing some other details with Su-yi, he announced that he was leaving. Watching the messenger leave, Su-yi couldn't help giving another sigh. Whether he was willing or not, since Seveni had become the Lampari Kingdom's queen, their relationship couldn't be as pure as when she was just a princess. The deeper the cooperation between the new flyer and the Lampari Kingdom, the more involved they were, the more complicated their relationship would be. In the end, it was already strange that the two of them could maintain the most basic friendship. This wasn't something the two of them could decide, because behind them were the Lampari Kingdom and the new flyer, carrying the hopes of countless people. Thinking of the complicated situations that could occur in the future, Su-yi gave a bitter laugh. He shook his head and threw away all these negative thoughts. He focused his thoughts on another important matter for the new flyer. The Lampari Kingdom situation had been resolved in less than 3 months. Now the Lampari Kingdom was gradually stabilizing with Seveni's sudden burst of strength. The Principality of Constantine was the opposite. Lord Wine's wild expansion in the north of the Principality of Constantine had finally attracted the retaliation of the other lords. In the center of the Principality of Constantine, there was a lord who had recently seized territory that Lord Wine had suddenly joined forces with 3 other lords. While Lord Wine hadn't stabilized himself yet, they attacked Lord Wine with all their might. The subordinates of these 4 lords also had some military magic machines bought from a new flyer. Although their individual strength couldn't compare to Lord Wine's subordinates, they weren't that far off and they had half the numbers. So when both sides began fighting, because Lord Wine hadn't stabilized himself and couldn't replenish his supplies, he was defeated in the end. This was the first time Lord Wine had lost a battle since he started attacking other lords. Lord Wine flew into a rage after his defeat and directly found Su-yi. He gave Su-yi a clear request that the new flyer couldn't sell military magic machines to the other lords of the Principality of Constantine. Otherwise, he would take back the territory he had given Su-yi and take all the businesses of the Shinfei Chamber of Commerce for himself. Su-yi didn't immediately agree to his request, but he also didn't immediately reject it. However, Lord Wine didn't plan on giving Su-yi time to consider, giving him 3 days to consider it. Su-yi was seriously considering this problem. If he agreed to Lord Wine's request, it was equal to New Flyer fully supporting Lord Wine. This was equal to putting New Flyer on the opposite side of the other lords of the Principality of Constantine, which would even cause Duke Stantine to be dissatisfied. But if he didn't agree, he would face the wrath of Lord Wine. Lord Wine's threat wasn't a joke. Su-yi had been considering this problem since he received Lord Wine's ultimatum the day before yesterday, and had already considered it for 2 days. He had already considered all the gains and losses during this time, and now he just needed to make a final decision. Su-yi was a bit hesitant at first, but after receiving the news of Seveni's coronation from the messenger, it was like a door had opened in his heart. I've already given in long enough this time. I'm afraid I can't give in again. Chapter 595. The boundary between Lord Wine and Su-yi's territory was mainly a river that came from the border between the Principality of Constantine and the Black Rice Wasteland, finally flowing into the Endless Sea. It was called the Abundant River, which meant a rich river. This abundant river wasn't that wide, but after Su-yi took over this territory, he imitated the Rum River outside Banda City. He widened the Abundant River and built a dam near the mouth of the river, making the narrowest part of the river 50 meters wide and the deepest part 20 meters deep. In the beginning, there were many people in the new flyer who didn't understand why Su-yi he wanted to change the abundant river on such a large scale because he had invested over 500,000 gold coins to change this river. To most people, this wasn't a necessary expense at all. However, today, when Count Wine led 10,000 of his most elite troops to the banks of the abundant river, looking at this incomparably wide and bottomless river, he found that Su Yi's method was just too far-sighted. With this natural barrier, his subordinates couldn't fly over at all, so naturally they couldn't attack new flyers' territory. 5 days ago, Count Wine received a statement from Su Yi. In the statement, Su Yi rejected Lord Wine's request of not selling military magic machines to the other lords of the Principality of Constantine. He also said that since this territory belonged to him, Count Wine didn't have the right to take it back. As for the businesses of the Xinfei Chamber of Commerce, Count Wine didn't have the right to take them at all. Su Yi's words were very impolite, directly saying that Count Wine's idea was wishful thinking. Seeing this statement, Count Wine flew into a rage. In just 5 days, he gathered 10,000 of his most elite troops to invade Su Yi's territory. To him, the new flyer only had less than 2,000 guards, and half of them were left on the Black Rice Wasteland. The guards on Su Yi's territory were only around 1,000 guards, so it was impossible for them to stop his army. However, in the beginning, they met the giant obstacle of the abundant river. It was even hard for them to enter Su Yi's territory. Looking at the factories and beautiful houses on the other side of the river, as well as the smooth roads on the land, Count Wine gave a strong snort. There was an uncontrollable look of greed in his eyes. Actually, he already had the idea of swallowing the Xinfei Chamber of Commerce. The great value of the Xinfei Chamber of Commerce was something he knew best as someone who had been neighbors with a new flyer for a long time. He was very clear that if he could completely control the new flyer, then in the Principality of Constantine, he would become the strongest lord, even stronger than Duke Stantine. But before, Count Wine felt that his strength wasn't enough, so even if he was drooling over the new flyer, he could only endure it. However, after defeating friend Count and the other lords, Count Wine's strength had increased by several times. His confidence had also increased, and he even believed that he had the strength to easily defeat Duke Stantine. However, when the four lords joined forces to counterattack him, it made him realize a problem. The reason why he could easily defeat Count Fran and the other lords was because he had the military magic machines provided by the Frestec Chamber of Commerce. It made the battle strength of his soldiers far surpass that of the other lords, which allowed him to charge forward in a triumphant manner. And the reason why the four lords who attacked him made him suffer his first defeat was because their subordinates were also equipped with the military magic machines provided by the new flyer, allowing both sides to stand on the same starting line. From easily defeating the opponent to being evenly matched, the difference was that they didn't have the military magic machines. Count Wine understood this point better than anyone else. So after careful consideration, Count Wine gave Su Yi the unreasonable request of not allowing the new flyer to continue selling military magic machines to the other lords in the Principality of Constantine. Count Wine didn't expect Su Yi to agree, or rather he hoped that Su Yi wouldn't agree, because this way, he would have enough excuse to attack the new flyer and swallow the new flyer. As long as he could control the new flyer, he would have the advantage in equipment and could easily defeat all the other lords in the duchy. He would occupy the Principality of Constantine and become the next Duke Stantine. He even had the confidence to fight his way out of the Principality of Constantine and defeat all the countries on the continent, becoming the new overlord of the continent. But before realizing this grand goal, he had to solve the problem in front of him. Where's the ship? Is it not here yet? Count Wine impatiently asked his confidant beside him. He and his 10,000 subordinates had been waiting by the abundant river for an entire morning. They were waiting for the ships from other places to transport their soldiers across this damn river. We've already gathered some ships, but there aren't many. I'm afraid there's no way to transport all of us at once. The confidant replied with an awkward look. My lord, why don't we try to cross the bridge directly? Count Wine looked in the direction of his confidant's finger. His eyes fell on a wide bridge that spanned the abundant river not too far from here. With just one look, Count Wine's face sunk. He slapped his confidant's head and angrily scolded, "Are you an idiot? Don't you see the row of magic bazookas and magic repeating crossbows on the other side of the bridge? If we charge over like this, do you believe that we won't be able to cross the bridge, even if we all die?" The confidant rubbed his head and muttered, "It can't be that exaggerated, right? It's not like we haven't used the magic bazookas and magic repeating crossbows before. They aren't so strong that we can't deal with them." "Nonsense. The magic bazookas and magic repeating crossbows we're using are all provided by New Flyer. They definitely wouldn't give us the best. I'm certain that the magic bazookas and magic repeating crossbows they use are much stronger than ours." Count Wine continued reprimanding him. "Then again, the losses from charging across the bridge are too big. If we go across the river, we can minimize the losses. In the end, they have too few people, right? Do you understand?" The confidant nodded. I understand. Sir Lord really is wise." Count Wine gave a cold snort and turned to look at the other side of the river with knitted brows. Although he made it sound easy, he knew that even if he had an absolute advantage in terms of numbers, they would still suffer heavy losses if they wanted to break through the abundant river. But as long as they could control New Flyer in the end, then they could bear any losses. After all, these subordinates were just commoners that were forcefully recruited from the territory. If they died, they could just recruit more. As long as they had enough power, they could conquer a bigger territory and have more people. A mere 10,000 people was nothing much. "Sir Lord, someone is flying over." The confidant on the side suddenly raised his hand and pointed at the distant sky. Flying over? Count Wine was taken aback. He looked up and saw a person flying over at high speed. After a moment, he had already crossed the wide, abundant river and landed in front of Count Wine's army. When the person landed, Count Wine took a closer look and froze again. This person was actually Su Yi. "Sir Lord, can you come out and talk to me?" Su Yi's gaze shot towards Count Wine's direction until it landed on Count Wine's face. Seeing the faint smile on Su Yi's face, Count Wine's heart skipped a beat and his expression changed. He suddenly realized that he had overlooked a very important issue. When calculating the battle strength of a New Flyer, he had only included the guards of the New Flyer, but he had completely ignored a very important factor that could be decisive in a traditional battle in the signs. That was the existence of magicians. Because the Principality of Constantine was small and the average quality of the population was low, there weren't many magicians in the duchy, and there wasn't a single great magician. Even if Lord Wine had many soldiers and their strength far surpassed before, there wasn't a single magician in his army. This was because all the magicians in the Principality of Constantine had been recruited by Duke Stantine, and Duke Stantine didn't allow other lords to recruit magicians. Now that he saw Su Yi fly over the river, Count Wine immediately thought of this serious problem. Compared to him who didn't have any magicians, New Flyer had a large number of magicians. Not mentioning anything else, just the Magic Research Institute of New Flying Chamber of Commerce had a total of 463 magicians. The lowest was a 4th grade magician, and there were 117 of them that were 6th grade magicians or higher. There was no need to mention that New Flyer also had a super heavyweight existence, which was Great Magician Camilla. Thinking of the 1,000 magicians in New Flyer that were 3rd grade and below in charge of the Magic Machine Corps, it was certain that in terms of magicians, not only did New Flyer far surpass Count Wine, they even surpassed the entire Principality of Constantine. Even this young Frestec Chamber of Commerce's chairman, Su Yi, who looked harmless with a sunny smile, was actually a powerful 9th grade magician. Chapter 596. Count Wine's face sunk. After thinking for a bit, he rode his horse forward and looked down at Su Yi as he said in a deep voice, "What? Chairman Su, are you afraid after seeing my army? Are you willing to accept my conditions?" Su Yi revealed a faint smile and shook his head as he said, "No, I'm just here to advise Sir Count. Our cooperation was very happy before, so there was no need for you to destroy our good relationship. If you withdraw your army now, I can treat it as if nothing happened, and we can happily continue our cooperation." "Humph." Count Wine gave a strong snort. "Happily continue our cooperation? In order to obtain the military magic machines from your company, I have already given the most important resources in my territory to your new flyer. If we continue our cooperation, are you planning on swallowing all of my territory?" Sui looked at Count Wine in surprise, thinking that this lord's counterattack was quite good. He was clearly too greedy, wanted to swallow the new flyer, but now he was saying that the new flyer wanted to swallow his territory. Of course, to be honest, wasn't that Sui didn't have this idea. "Lord, I'm a merchant, so our cooperation is a normal business cooperation. You provide our company with enough gold coins or the resources we need, so naturally we will provide you with the military magic machines you need. No matter what, in the process of defeating Count Fran and the other lords, our new flyer has helped you a lot, right?" Count Wine gave a cold snort, but he didn't deny it. This was a fact that everyone knew, so if he denied it, he would be too shameless. "That's enough. Don't try to argue with me. I'll only ask you one question. Are you willing to agree to my request from before?" Count Wine asked in a cold voice. Sui slowly shook his head. "Sir Count, I've said it before, I am a merchant. To a merchant, business is the fairest transaction. If you force a difference in treatment, it goes against the principles of being a merchant, so forgive me for not agreeing." Count Wine gave another cold snort. "You dare say that you don't treat people differently? Forget about the others. When you provide the military magic machines to Her Highness 70 of the Lampari Kingdom, you are very different from others." Sui gave a shrug. "I think that Sir Count should know that Her Highness 70 is different from others. The most important thing is that she is my friend." "Friend?" Count Wine gave a laugh. "This is simply laughable. You actually want to be friends with Her Majesty the Queen? Huh?" Sui couldn't help rolling his eyes. Although he felt that once 70 became the most respected queen of the Lampari Kingdom, it would be hard for the two of them to maintain the pure friendship from before, but when these words came from Count Wine's mouth, it was just too grating. "All right, Sir Count, it seems like you won't be retreating today," Sui asked. "Nonsense." Count Wine raised the sword in his hand and pointed it at Sui. "Since I've already led an army here, why aren't you obediently surrendering? Let me tell you, if you're willing to surrender, I could give you a suitable position. If you're not willing, hey, don't blame me for being impolite." Sui looked at the 10,000 subordinates behind Count Wine. They were all in different formations, and their clothes were all over the place, looking like a mixed army. With a smile, he spread his hands and said, "Since Sir Count isn't willing to retreat, and I'm also not willing to retreat, then Sir Count, let's meet again after the battle. That is on the premise that you're still alive when the time comes." Count Wine's expression changed, and he shouted, "Since you're here, you want to leave? Keep him here for me." With Count Wine's order, the 500 archers behind him raised the magic crossbows in their hands and pressed the buttons on the magic crossbows. So. Countless arrows pierced through the air, and the sky in front of Sui was filled with arrows in the blink of an eye. It looked like the sky was blotted out and the ground was covered in arrows. The momentum was extremely shocking. Seeing that the arrows were actually mixed with the lights that represented magic formations, Sui couldn't help but chuckle. Count Wine actually used a magic arrow that cost 3 gold coins just to deal with him. He really thought highly of him. This rain of arrows that blotted out the sky and covered the earth probably cost close to 1,000 gold coins. No wonder Count Wine always complained to Sui that war was too expensive and that New Flyer's military magic machines were too expensive. With how he used them, it would be strange if he didn't spend a lot. Seeing that the rain of arrows covered the sky above him, Sui raised his hand, and a light blue magic barrier enveloped him completely. The ordinary arrows didn't cause any reaction at all when they hit the magic barrier. They fell powerlessly and slid to the ground outside the barrier. On the other hand, the magic arrows that were much more powerful only caused tiny ripples on a magic shield. Then, the light disappeared, and they fell to the ground like ordinary arrows. In just a breath's time, piles of arrows piled up on the ground around Su-yi, but not a single arrow was able to enter the range of his magic barrier. Count Wine's face darkened when he saw Su-yi's relaxed expression. He thought for a moment and raised his hand to stop the archers from continuing to shoot. According to the data provided by New Flyer, the terrifying power of the magic crossbows alone was enough to defeat an advanced mage. But after all, this was the data provided by New Flyer. Count Wine couldn't be sure if it was adulterated. Moreover, these magic crossbows were developed by New Flyer, so Su-yi as the chairman might have a special method to deal with them. Seeing the other side stop shooting, Su-yi waved his hand at Wine and turned to fly back. Seeing Su-yi's figure in the air, Count Wine forcefully gritted his teeth and resisted the urge to order the archers to shoot him down from the sky. There was no meaning in wasting these things on Su-yi. As long as they successfully attacked Su-yi's territory and took it, no matter how strong Su-yi's magic was, he was only a single person and couldn't affect the situation. Even with the terrifying existence of great magician Camilla, it was impossible to change the situation with just a few people. In this judgment, Count Wine was very confident in himself. However, as soon as this thought appeared in his mind, he suddenly heard the sound of a bowstring being released from the other side of the river. His expression instantly changed. "This is bad. It's a magic trebuchet. Be careful of dodging." Count Wine raised his head and shouted. He saw that in the sky on the other side of the river, a giant fireball was flying through the sky at high speed, falling into the army behind Count Wine. Hong! With a deafening explosion, the fireball exploded in the middle of the army, scattering into countless small fireballs of different sizes. These fireballs hit Count Wine's subordinates and instantly ignited them, turning them into flaming people. Some of the soldiers were even disfigured by the impact of the fireballs, which showed how terrifying the impact of the fireballs was. Just a single fireball was enough to make over 100 soldiers lose their ability to fight. Seeing the chaotic situation behind him, Count Wine was filled with rage. That damn Su-yi, he really did hide the best things. However, no matter how angry he was, it was useless. After the first fireball exploded, there were countless muffled sounds that came from the other side of the river. Each sound made Count Wine's heart skip a beat, while also bringing along a giant fireball. Countless fireballs fell from the sky like meteors in a Count Wine's army. Countless giant explosions rang out on both sides of the river. The tens of thousands of soldiers that had been standing behind Count Wine were instantly thrown into chaos by these terrifying fireballs, suffering heavy casualties. "Damn! Charge forward for me. Charge to the bridge. You're not allowed to retreat. Whoever retreats will die." Count Wine pulled out his long sword and cut off the head of one of his subordinates that tried to escape out of fear. He yelled, "The first to reach the other side of the bridge will be rewarded with 500 gold coins." Perhaps because of the stimulation of the high reward, or perhaps because of the fear in their hearts, Count Wine's subordinates didn't care about the formation at this time. They swarmed towards the only bridge that connected to the abundant river. Many soldiers even jumped into the river and planned to swim to the other side. However, when the first batch of soldiers came onto the bridge, they saw that on the other side of the bridge, there were 3 rows of guards wearing the uniform of the Frestec Chamber of Commerce's guards. Each one of them was holding a large cylindrical thing that was aimed at them. They heard a low shout from a New Flyer's guards from afar, and then they saw the cylindrical object in the guard's hands emit a faint green magic light. A moment later, countless arrows shot out from the cylindrical object. These arrows were clearly much smaller than ordinary arrows, but their speed was extremely fast. Moreover, the penetrating power of these arrows was extremely strong. The various leather armors and even real armors of Count Wine's subordinates were easily penetrated by these arrows, as if they were made of paper. Some arrows even pierced through the chest of a soldier in front of them and ruthlessly pierced through the chest of another soldier behind. Just one arrow took away the lives of 2 soldiers. Although there weren't many New Flyers guards guarding the bridge, The arrows shot out from the cylindrical object in their hands were incredibly fast. They were also much denser than normal magic repeating crossbows. They were also divided into 3 groups. After the first group used up all the arrows in the cylindrical object, the second group immediately followed up and fired again. By the time the third group was done, the first group of crossbowmen had finished loading and could once again enter the battle without stopping. Thus, from the moment Count Wine's first soldier stepped onto the bridge, the arrows on the other side of the bridge didn't stop at all. Under such a terrifying and dense rain of arrows, Count Wine's subordinates charged onto the bridge in batches, only to fall one after another. In just a moment, the bridge was piled with corpses of soldiers, and the distance they had advanced wasn't even 20 meters. "My lord, should we retreat?" The trusted aide standing beside Count Wine turned to look at him with a face full of fear. Count Wine's expression was uncertain. He wanted to give up, but he was extremely unwilling to do so. The trusted aide could naturally see his hesitation and try to persuade him. "My lord, we are only retreating temporarily. The new flyer won't be able to escape our control. Although we can't break in, they won't be able to come out either. As long as we block their way out, they won't be able to resupply in such a small place. They will surrender sooner or later." Count Wine's expression softened. He thought about it and felt that the trusted aide's words made sense. Count Wine raised his head and looked at the calm river bank, as if they didn't know what was going on. He snorted heavily and waved his hand. "Retreat." Chapter 597. They're retreating like this? Seeing Count Wine leading his subordinates away in a panic, the new flyer guards who were already prepared to fight were all stunned. When they saw Count Wine leading 10,000 subordinates to attack, most of them were very nervous. After all, compared to them, the Frestech Chamber of Commerce's defenses were just too weak. Even if they had the abundant river to help them defend, to use 1,000 people to defend against 10,000 people, in the minds of most people, it was something that was impossible. However, when the battle began, everyone found that the battle was far from what they expected. It was so easy that people didn't dare believe it. From beginning to end, the new flyer guards just stayed by the river, controlling the large magic trebuchets to throw large-scale flame bombs at the other side, while using the new magic repeating crossbows to block the bridge. They didn't do anything else. If it was said that the 200 people in charge of blocking the bridge had contact with Count Wine's subordinates, the other new flyer guards didn't even see what Count Wine's subordinates looked like. From beginning to end, both sides didn't engage in close combat at all. In the end, the whole battle ended in this situation. Count Wine fled with his subordinates in disgrace. This kind of strange battle, it was rare to see this kind of battle in the history of the signs. Seeing the confused expressions of the company guards, Sue laughed. He thought that even the Frestech Chamber of Commerce guards who had been in contact with the military magic machines the most hadn't broken away from the traditional thinking of the era of cold weapons. As the new flyer developed more and more military magic machines, there would inevitably be a revolutionary change in the war on the signs. If there was anyone who didn't change, they could only be like Count Wine. They could only passively take a beating from beginning to end, even being slaughtered. Actually, this kind of change had already been shown in the Lampari Kingdom's civil war. The reason why 70 could lead her less than 5,000 guards to easily defeat the army sent by Duke Stagg was because 70's guards had stayed with her on Suyi's territory for 4 months. They had trained with the Frestech Chamber of Commerce's guards on various military magic machines, so they had grasped this new method of battle. In the actual battle, with a large amount of military magic machines provided by New Flyer, when 70's guards faced the army sent by Duke Stagg, it was the same as the battle just now. They completely crushed the enemy. It could be said that in the Lampari Kingdom's civil war, every battle had the same result. This led to the internal battle of the Lampari Kingdom that everyone thought would last a long time to end in less than 3 months with 70's complete victory. Suti wasn't surprised by this result at all. To him, soldiers equipped with large amounts of military magic machines, when faced with soldiers using normal swords, It was like an adult beating a baby. The normal soldiers who were still in the era of cold weapons couldn't even approach the soldiers equipped with military magic machines before they fell countless times. With this kind of strength comparison, what suspense was there in the battle? The reason why Sue-Yi rejected Count Wine's unreasonable request was because he had absolute confidence in the strength of the new flyer guards. Not to mention the 10,000 people Count Wine brought. Even if he brought all the 30,000 subordinates he had, Sue-Yi was certain that he wouldn't be able to cross the abundant river at all. Not to mention that in the battle, just now, the new flyer didn't even send out a single magician. The only troublesome thing for Sue-Yi was what he had to face after this. Although Count Wine had recognized the difference in strength between the two sides in this short battle and knew that he couldn't invade the new flyer, he still had the advantage in numbers. It wasn't a problem for the Frestec Chamber of Commerce to defend their territory, but if they wanted to attack Count Wine's territory with just 1,000 guards, they really couldn't make ends meet. Sue-Yi was certain that Count Wine would use his advantage in numbers to seal off the new flyer. If Count Wine sealed off all the paths to the new flyer, it would cut off all the resources that the new flyer could get, which would cause heavy damage to the new flyer. Although Sue-Yi wasn't afraid of this situation because he had several other methods to solve this problem, Sue-Yi definitely wouldn't allow this to happen. This time he decided to fall out with Count Wine. Sue-Yi wanted to show his fangs to everyone and give them a warning. Hart. Sue-Yi turned to call out to Hart, who was leading the 500 guards, but didn't participate in the battle at all. Yes, sir. Hart immediately became spirited and replied proudly. Set off. Yes. Hart waved his hand, and the 500 guards jumped onto the 30 magic armored vehicles behind them. They charged across the bridge and headed towards Count Wine's army that was still retreating on the other side of the river. Hashtag, hashtag, hashtag. Your Highness, it's already done. Is there anything you're not satisfied with? A maid carefully smoothed out the hem of Seveni's dress, and two other maids brought a large mirror in front of her, completely reflecting Seveni's figure. Seveni in the mirror was dressed up, looking beautiful and dignified. Seveni gave a slight nod. It's done. The maid took the mirror away, and another group of maids came over. Each of them had various kinds of beautiful accessories in their hands, carefully putting them on Seveni. Today was the day Her Highness officially ascended to the throne as queen. All the steps and decorations had to be done perfectly, even down to the smallest detail. There was no room for sloppiness. However, Seveni looked at the busy maids around her with nervous looks, and there was a bit of confusion in her eyes. Her attention seemed to have flown to an unknown place. Since the messenger brought back the news that Sue-Yi wouldn't be attending the coronation ceremony, Seveni suddenly felt like she had lost interest in everything. Even the most important coronation ceremony couldn't make her feel excited at all. She was like a wooden person during these days, just following the arrangements of the old nobles of the royal parliament and participating in all kinds of traditional ceremonies, preparing for the coronation. During all the ceremonies, even if she looked perfect on the surface, she felt a bit tired in her heart and even felt that there was no meaning in what she was doing. Seveni often asked herself what was wrong, but when she was chasing this answer, Sue-Yi's gentle smile would appear from time to time. Could it be that because Sue-Yi isn't coming, I feel that there's no meaning in doing this? When this thought appeared in her mind for the first time, Seveni was scared. She never thought that Sue-Yi coming to the ceremony would be this important to her. Other than royal father, Seveni had never seen another person who had such an important position in her heart. So she was stunned. Just what was going on? There was a series of light footsteps, and a small figure charged into Seveni's embrace under the surprised cries of the maids, waking Seveni from her thoughts. Looking down, she found that the little fellow who had charged in was Prince William. Aunt, you really are beautiful today. Prince William hugged Seveni as he excitedly called out. Seveni revealed a faint smile and patted William's head, as she couldn't help feeling emotional. If one had to say who had an important position in her heart, this Prince William, who wasn't even 5 years old, could also be considered one. Eric had made a big mistake, and now he had to pay the price, but Prince William hadn't done anything wrong. Moreover, Lampuri 13th and Eric had died in the past 2 years, so 70 didn't have many relatives left in the royal family. Her other big brother, Prince Mifam, had stayed in his territory since Lampuri 13th passed away, never being willing to show himself. Now that 70 was about to ascend the throne, he also refused to attend the ceremony. So the only relative left by 70's side was Prince William. Thinking of this, Su Yi's figure suddenly appeared in 70's mind. She couldn't help being surprised. Could it be that she had unknowingly treated Su Yi as a relative? When this thought flashed in her mind, 70 found that it seemed to be true. If she didn't treat Su Yi as a relative, how could she have revealed the shocking secret of Eric poisoning her royal father to Su Yi? It had to be known. 70 had only told this secret to Su Yi. She hadn't even told His Highness Mifam and her most trusted people. Based on this, in 70's heart, Su Yi's position was even higher than her relatives. After all, for 70 who was born in the royal family, her so-called relatives were even more terrifying than her enemies. After understanding this, 70 couldn't help having a bitter smile on her face. No matter what she thought of Su Yi wasn't willing to come to the coronation ceremony that was very important to her. Perhaps in Su Yi's heart, she wasn't that important. Chapter 598. For the people of the Lampari Kingdom, Her Highness 70 had finally ascended the throne, becoming the 6th queen in the history of the Lampari Kingdom, which was very good news. Although the Lampari Kingdom had been plagued with disasters in the past 2 years, with 2 kings dying and a civil war erupting this year, the final result was good for most people. Her Majesty 70 had always had a good reputation in the Lampari Kingdom. Now that she had become the most honorable queen, she should bring a happy change to the Lampari Kingdom. Moreover, Her Majesty 70 had always supported the New Flyer. She had a good relationship with the New Flyer's chairman Su Yi. Now that the Lampari Kingdom was controlled by Her Majesty 70, she would definitely let the New Flyer return to the Lampari Kingdom and lead the Lampari Kingdom back to prosperity. However, most people in the Lampari Kingdom didn't know that the New Flyer was actually very busy. Perhaps she wouldn't be able to return to the Lampari Kingdom for now. Although Su Yi had taken 500 guard from the company and used the powerful mobility of the magic armored vehicles to move through Count Wine's territory, destroying several of Count Wine's garrisons, making him lose at least 2,000 subordinates, and causing chaos in his territory. 500 people were just too few. For Lord Wine's territory that was over 10,000 square kilometers, it was impossible for just 500 people to take it all. Su Yi had sent out this small squad just to teach Lord Wine a lesson. However, the most important thing was the aftermath of this. On the last day of year 3874, Su Yi didn't stay at home to welcome the new year with steel and Freya. Rather, he drove his magic sedan to Lord Wine's territory. His trip this time was to negotiate with Lord Wine. His goal was to stabilize the situation in Lord Wine's territory. Lord Wine's territory falling into chaos wasn't in line with the benefits of a New Flyer, because this would hinder the transportation of resources to the New Flyer, and the products that the New Flyer wanted to ship out would also be hindered. Before he had enough power to swallow all of Lord Wine's territory, Su Yi wanted to coexist peacefully with Lord Wine. For example, the situation from before was one that Su Yi was very satisfied with, but because of Lord Wine's greed and ambition, it had been destroyed. Now that Su Yi was here to negotiate with Lord Wine, he wanted him to pay the price for his greed and ambition. The magic sedan suddenly jolted, and Su Yi was sent flying from his seat, almost hitting the roof of the magic sedan. Su Yi looked at the situation of the road in front of him and couldn't help knitting his brows. When he was thinking about this, he didn't notice the hole in the road. Now that he looked at it, he found that the road in front of him was filled with holes, looking very miserable. Based on the situation of these potholes, Su Yi guessed that the company's guards led by Hart should have fought with Lord Wine's subordinates here. Judging from the shape and radius of the potholes on the ground, They should have been left behind by the small incendiary bombs fired by the small magic rocket launchers carried by the guards. Based on the density of the marks on the ground, Hart should have met a large group of enemies, so they would fire such a dense amount of small magic bazookas at once. He carefully avoided the holes on the road, while he couldn't help deeply knitting his brows. This road was built by the Amsterdam Chamber of Commerce over a year. It could be considered the most important road in Count Wine's territory. But now that this part had been destroyed by the battle, it would affect the smooth flow of the entire road. Looking at the sides of the road, he could see several houses that had been burned to ruins. These should be the residences of the locals. It seemed like they had been affected by the battle. It was clear that because of the battle between the new flyer and Count Wine, the lives of the locals had been seriously affected. Seeing all kinds of miserable scenes along the way, Suyi's expression became more and more gloomy. If he had a choice, of course he hoped that everyone could live in peace. Everyone could focus on studying magic machines, using the convenience brought by magic machines to greatly improve everyone's lives. But because of Lord Wine's greed and ambition, these citizens who had been living peaceful lives were also involved. This really made Suyi very angry. What made him even angrier was that he had no choice at all. He couldn't agree to Lord Wine's unreasonable request, and he couldn't choose to surrender to Lord Wine. So in the end, the only choice was to start a war with Lord Wine. After the magic sedan passed the destroyed road, it went back onto the smooth road and gradually sped up. In just half an hour, it stopped in front of a manor that was heavily guarded just from the outside. When Suyi got out of the car, there were over 100 fully armed soldiers that surrounded him. Suyi looked over these soldiers and said with a cold snort, "Go tell Count Wine that New Flyer's chairman Suyi is here." Suyi? The soldiers were all surprised. They couldn't help raising the weapons in their hands and pointing them at Suyi. Everyone stop. A soldier who seemed to be the leader suddenly shouted out, stopping the soldiers. He looked over Suyi before hesitantly asking, Chairman Suyi, what are you here for?" Suyi gave him a faint smile. "I want to talk to Sir Count. Help me report this." The soldiers looked at each other in blank dismay. Now that New Flyer was at war with Count Wine, and it was Wine who was being beaten, Suyi suddenly came to talk to Count Wine. "What did you want to talk about?" The leader thought about it before nodding. "Please wait a bit." After saying this, he said something to his subordinates before quickly running into the manor. Suyi smiled at the nervous soldiers around him. He sat on the hood of the magic sedan and looked very relaxed as he calmly waited. He was certain that Count Wine would definitely agree to negotiate with him. The small team led by Hart was invincible in Count Wine's territory. They had defeated countless Count Wine subordinates while not injuring a single one of them. Count Wine couldn't do a thing to them. So now that Suyi was willing to negotiate, he couldn't ask for anything more. As expected, after a while, there was a person who looked like a housekeeper who ran out of the manor. He looked at Suyi with a complicated gaze before respectfully inviting him in. After seeing Count Wine in the main hall of the manor, Suyi was surprised to find that Count Wine had lost quite a bit of weight. Suyi had known Count Wine for 3 years, and his impression of him was that he had a fat head and oily face. But the current Count Wine was much thinner. Although he wasn't considered slender, he was much more balanced. His face had turned from round to square, making him look much more dignified. Of course, this dignified look was related to his calm as water face. Seeing Suyi come in with the housekeeper, Count Wine's face sunk even more as he said in a cold voice, "Suyi, you really are bold. You actually dare come here alone. Do you believe that I won't kill you?" Suyi shook his head with a smile. "No, you don't dare." Count Wine's brows knit as he angrily said, "You actually dare say that I don't dare?" Someone take. Halfway through his words, it was like Count Wine's throat was blocked by something and he couldn't say anything else. Suyi looked at him with a smile, looking calm and unruffled in the midst of chaos. Count Wine stared at Suyi with his eyes wide open. After a while, he suddenly deflated like a balloon and sighed deeply as he waved his hand at the housekeeper. After the housekeeper left, Count Wine looked at Suyi again, his gaze much calmer. "Chairman Suyi, are you here to negotiate with me?" Su smiled. Sir Count Wine is indeed a wise man. That's right. I think Sir Count Wine should also understand that this situation isn't good for either of us. Count Wine said in a low voice. Then what do you want to do? Very simple. Let's stop the war. He spread out his hands. Since continuing the war isn't beneficial to either of us, we should choose to stop the war. Do you think we should stop just because you say so? Count Wine snorted. Your subordinates have done all kinds of evil in my territory. Do you want to just let go like this? He shook his head. Sir Count Wine, I still want to go back and prepare for the new year with my wife and children, so I don't want to waste time on this meaningless war of words. I came this time to ask you to stop the war. What's your answer? Count Wine was stunned by Su Yi's blunt words. His face turned red and he wanted to get angry, but when he saw Su Yi's indifferent expression, he knew that getting angry was meaningless. After thinking about it, Count Wine suppressed his anger and snorted, Fine, I accept the ceasefire. But Chairman Su, for the losses our territory has suffered during this time, shouldn't you give us some compensation? He shook his head again. Sir Count Wine, you're mistaken. You should be the one compensating us, not the other way around. What joke? Count Wine was furious and stood up. My subordinates didn't even take a step into your territory. What losses did you have? Of course, during this period of time, many of the resources that were supposed to be shipped to our Chamber of Commerce have been delayed, and the products that our Chamber of Commerce is shipping out have also been obstructed, causing our Chamber of Commerce to suffer huge losses. Sir Count Wine, don't you think we should compensate? Bullshit. Count Wine couldn't help but curse. You're just making less money, but what about me? How many people have died? You started this war, so you should bear the losses yourself. It has nothing to do with me. He said coldly. My lord, if you don't want to accept my conditions, then it's very simple. I have many other ways to transport resources in and goods out. But do you have other ways to resist the attacks of the other lords in the duchy? Count Wine opened his mouth, but he couldn't say anything in the class. After a while, he slumped down in his chair and said to Su in a dejected manner, All right, tell me your request. Su revealed a faint smile. All right, first I want a bigger piece of land. Chapter 599. Count Wine couldn't raise any objections to Su Yi's conditions, because after the two sides started fighting, the New Flyers' losses were bearable and they could find other ways to solve their problems, but he couldn't make up for his losses. Because he had defeated Count Fran and the other lords, he had over 30,000 soldiers under him. Just in terms of soldiers, he was one of the lords in the Principality of Constantine, second only to Duke Stantine. And in terms of battle strength, he might even surpass Duke Stantine. But after fighting with the New Flyer, he found that he couldn't do anything to the New Flyer. It was fine if he couldn't break into Su Yi's territory, but he couldn't even completely seal off the New Flyer. He couldn't do anything to the New Flyer's destruction team. The 500 human guards, led by Hart, were invincible in Wine's territory. In just half a month, Count Wine lost several thousand elite soldiers, as well as many important supply points. If the two sides continued like this, Count Wine believed that he would one day be worn down to death by the 500 New Flyer guards. And the most important loss from fighting with the New Flyer was that he couldn't obtain any military magic machine supplies from the New Flyer. While fighting with the New Flyer, the four lords from the south were still attacking Count Wine's new territory. At the beginning, Count Wine could easily block them and even counterattack. But after a few emergency orders, Count Wine found a serious problem. Because of the war with the Frestac Chamber of Commerce, they had lost their supply of military magic machines. Adding in a large consumption from the battle, the military magic machines in his subordinates' hands couldn't last for long. According to his estimations, the supplies in his hands could only last for a week at most. Unlike him, the other four lords had long stockpiled a large number of military magic machine supplies. Every time he thought about losing the military magic machines while the four lords could still use them, Count Wine's heart was filled with a chill. He knew better than any other lord in the Principality of Constantine just how much the military magic machines could increase the fighting strength of his soldiers. Once this happened, his subordinates definitely wouldn't be able to stop the attacks of the four lords. If he couldn't get any more military magic machines, he could only retreat in defeat. Not only would he have to give up all his newly conquered territories, but no, those four lords definitely wouldn't stop. They would definitely continue to attack until he was completely defeated. Count Wine was very clear about this situation. So even if Su-Yi didn't come to negotiate with him, he already had the idea of negotiating with Su-Yi. Although Su-Yi's conditions were excessive, it was undoubtedly much easier to accept compared to the fate of having all his territories taken over by the four lords and then being defeated and killed. Not to mention that when Su-Yi gave these requests, he also gave Count Wine a condition that he never would have thought of, but also one that he dreamed of. As long as Count Wine agreed to Su-Yi's conditions, then the new flyer would prioritize new flyer's Wine as an important partner in the future. They would provide him with all sorts of military magic machines and access to the newest military magic machines that new flyer had developed. After hearing this condition, Count Wine's anger towards Su-Yi's various conditions instantly dissipated. He didn't think too much and agreed to all of Su-Yi's conditions. Because Su-Yi's so-called important partner meant that when Su-Yi provided military magic machines to all the lords in the Principality of Constantine, he would prioritize Count Wine and put the other lords behind. This meant that Count Wine would once again have an absolute advantage in terms of equipment when facing the other lords. And as long as he had an absolute advantage in terms of military magic machines, the other lords in the Principality of Constantine wouldn't be his match. As long as he could defeat all the other lords in the Principality, what was the point of agreeing to Su-Yi's conditions? Thus, Count Wine and Su-Yi had a pleasant discussion and confirmed the contents of the ceasefire agreement. According to the terms of the armistice agreement, after both sides stopped, Count Wine would cede close to 600 square kilometers of land to Su-Yi as compensation. Moreover, he would have to leave behind all the citizens of this land, which would be ceded completely. After obtaining this territory, Su-Yi's private territory would become a very long and narrow strip of land in the north of the Principality of Constantine. This territory was connected to the endless sea to the west, and the Principality of Constantine and the Kingdom of Ruhr to the east. If one looked at it from a map, it would be like a hat covering the Principality of Constantine's head, covering the road to the north from the Principality of Constantine. However, Count Wine didn't really care about this. The Principality of Constantine had always been sealed off due to its geography. It had very little contact with other countries on the signs. Even if the road to the north was completely sealed off, it wouldn't affect Count Wine at all. Moreover, this territory was only given to Su-Yi. It still belonged to the Principality of Constantine in name. If the Principality of Constantine wanted to enter the Black Rice Wasteland through the north, Su-Yi had no reason to refuse. Then again, the Frestec Chamber of Commerce's manpower was limited. It wasn't a problem to defend the previous territory, but to defend this long and narrow territory that didn't have a natural moat to defend, it was impossible. Thus, Count Wine was very relaxed when he signed the ceasefire agreement. From his point of view, even if Su-Yi asked him to leave all his citizens behind, it wouldn't be a threat. On the contrary, it might even be a failure. Count Wine knew the situation of the people in his territory very well. All the men in the territory who could be used to fight had now been recruited into the army. Most of the people left were the old, weak, sick, women, and children. They wouldn't be of any help to improve the combat strength of New Flyer. They would only be a burden. If Su-Yi left these useless people behind, it would only increase his burden. When Su-Yi left, Count Wine even pretended to tell Su-Yi with a heavy expression on his face. He asked Su-Yi to treat the people he left behind well. When Su-Yi agreed, Count Wine couldn't help but snicker in his heart. Did Su-Yi really think that he took advantage of the situation? What a joke. Hashtag. I think Count Wine must think that he took advantage of the situation. Su-Yi handed the ceasefire agreement to Kennard. This fellow who only thinks about war definitely didn't think that I didn't want this territory and these people for war. How could a fellow like him understand Sir Chairman's thoughts? Kennard laughed and took the ceasefire agreement. He carefully read it and nodded. Very good, Sir Chairman. This way, your territory can be connected to the Black Rice Wasteland and the Moonshadow Tribe. Moreover, the easternmost part can be connected to the Kingdom of Ruhr. As long as the Stru Road is completed, our company's products can easily enter the Kingdom of Ruhr and other places on the continent. This isn't the most important thing. Now that the situation in the Lampari Kingdom has changed, the biggest obstacle our company met before no longer exists. There isn't a problem in transporting goods on the continent, and it's much more convenient to go through the Lampari Kingdom. The most important thing in requesting this territory is to connect the Black Rice Wasteland with our current territory. That way it'll be much easier to develop. Su-yi said. Hearing Su-yi mention the situation in the Lampari Kingdom, Kennard looked at Su-yi with a strange expression. After hesitating a bit, he asked, Sir Chairman, why aren't you willing to participate in Her Majesty's 70s coronation? Our company will definitely have deeper cooperation with the kingdom in the future. Using this chance to deepen our relationship with Her Majesty will be very helpful to us. Su-yi turned to look in the direction of the Lampari Kingdom before slowly shaking his head. Just treat it as me being willful this time. Hearing the complicated emotions in Su-yi's voice, Kennard's expression changed. He looked at Su-yi and revealed a smile. All right, it's rare for Sir Chairman to be willful, so I don't have anything to say. Su-yi patted his shoulder with a smile. All right, I can be willful in this aspect, but I can't be willful in your matters. It's getting late. You should quickly pack up and go back to Anvilmar. Count Aaron must be waiting for you to reunite with him. If I keep you here, Aaron Count will definitely blame me. Kennard shook his head. Sir Father has always supported me staying by your side. Even if I don't go back to celebrate New Year's with him, he won't say anything. The one who really hates Sir Chairman is Sophia. Hearing the name Sophia, Su-yi revealed a bitter smile. Isn't Sophia already engaged? Help me persuade her to just treat me as her fantasy. It's best if she completely forgets about me in the future. That would be better for her. If she could just forget, then things would be much simpler. Kennard softly sighed. Sir Chairman, I understand Sophia's personality very well. She places more importance on the things she cares about than normal people. If she does something surprising because of this, it wouldn't be strange. Su-yi looked at Kennard with a puzzled expression. What does she want to do? Kennard shook his head. I can't guess. I'm just reminding you of this possibility. Su-yi thought for a bit before frowning and shaking his head. Not to mention him, most people in this world could not guess what this little girl was thinking. But no matter how bold Sophia was, what could she really do? Chapter 600. The new year of year 3785 passed very peacefully. The Lampari Kingdom that had fallen into chaos because of the civil war was quickly stabilized after Her Majesty 70 was crowned. In her speech on the first day of the new year, Her Majesty 70 used a passionate speech to tell everyone about her plans and expectations for the future of the Lampari Kingdom. She placed the focus of her speech on developing the magic machine industry, promising that she would use all her strength to develop the magic machine industry in the kingdom and work hard to improve the lives of the kingdom citizens. As for the specific actions that followed, Her Majesty 70 fulfilled her promise. The Magic Machine Industry Management Department that was directly led by Her Majesty 70 first removed the restrictions on the magic machine industry, taking away all the privileges of the 10 companies. Because those 10 companies had been returned to the kingdom after the rebellion was quelled, the kingdom's parliament was now holding a public auction of all the industries of those 10 companies. As long as it was a company that wanted to enter the magic machine industry, they could participate in the auction. Because Her Majesty 70 had already revealed her intention to develop the magic machine industry, and adding in the fact that she had shown support for the development of the magic machine industry when she was still the princess, once the auction was held, countless companies of the kingdom flocked over. They all wanted to use this chance to enter the magic machine industry that was about to become very prosperous. But at this time, the Magic Machine Industry Management Department and the Business Department released a joint announcement that attracted even more people's attention. The content of this announcement was very simple. It was to remove all the restrictions on the new flyer. When this announcement was published in the Lampuri Weekly, it created a stir in the country, because this announcement meant that the new flyer was likely to return to the Lampari Kingdom. Although the new flyer had only been established for less than 5 years, it had left a deep impression on the people of the Lampari Kingdom. The appearance of the Frestac Chamber of Commerce not only brought many new and useful magic machines. The more important thing was that with the power of a single company, a small border city like Banda City had become the most prosperous city in the kingdom. Moreover, with the power of the new flyer, the entire Lampari Kingdom had undergone a large change. Before, the Lampari Kingdom was poor and most people didn't even have enough to eat. But the appearance of the new flyer had brought large amounts of agricultural magic machines. First, it solved the basic food and clothing problem of the Lampari Kingdom's people. Then, because of the cooperation with the mysterious elves, they brought in the fertilizer, allowing the Lampari Kingdom's farmland to have a large harvest. The current Lampari Kingdom's harvest couldn't satisfy the needs of its citizens, but there was still a large surplus of grain each year. And in the past 2 years, they had the surplus of grain exports to other countries. Before the appearance of the new flyer, the Lampari Kingdom had to take out at least 200,000 gold coins from the kingdom's treasury to buy large amounts of high-priced grain from other countries, in order to ensure that there wouldn't be too many deaths each year. With this in and out, the difference was over 400,000 gold coins. Not to mention that because the appearance of the new flyer had led the development of the magic machine industry in the Lampari Kingdom, it had greatly increased the kingdom's finances. There were many projects that needed gold coins in the kingdom that could only be put on hold because they didn't have the money to invest in. This had greatly improved the kingdom's environment. For example, because the appearance of a new flyer had brought the extremely important material of cement, the Amsterdam Chamber of Commerce had built hundreds of large and small roads in the Lampari Kingdom. The total mileage exceeded 10,000 kilometers and connected every city in the Lampari Kingdom with flat roads, making transportation in the Lampari Kingdom extremely convenient. For example, the Armani Chamber of Commerce that cooperated with the new flyer could now use the large magic textile machines provided by the new flyer to quickly and efficiently weave large amounts of clothing. This caused the price of the originally expensive clothing to drop again and again, allowing the majority of the Lampari Kingdom citizens to be able to afford new clothing that wasn't made by them. Another example was, compared to the other chambers of commerce that cooperated with the new flyer, the changes that the new flyer brought to the Lampari Kingdom citizens were the greatest. Now, any family that was slightly better off would have at least one or several household magic machines. These household magic machines had greatly changed the living environment of these families. It could even be said that it had turned their lives upside down. Even if these household magic machines weren't all made by the new flyer and there were other brands of household magic machines, the appearance of these household magic machines was without a doubt brought by the new flyer. Every time they saw the various household magic machines in their homes, the citizens of the Lampari Kingdom would naturally miss the changes that the new flyer brought to their lives. In the past year, because of King Eric and Duke Stag, the new flyer had been forced to leave the Lampari Kingdom. Almost all the citizens of the Lampari Kingdom were filled with anger and sadness because of this. In the past year, because of the problems brought by the 10 companies of the Magic Machine Industry Management Department, everyone's lives had been affected to varying degrees. This made people miss the new flyer even more. So when a Magic Machine Industry Management Department and the Business Department announced that they were removing the restrictions on the new flyer, almost everyone in the Lampari Kingdom couldn't help cheering in their hearts. The new flyer was back. Their lives were going to be better again. Among them, the ones who were the most excited were, of course, the people of Banda City. So when the Banta Times announced that the new flyer service center in Banda City was reopening, Banta City was filled with excitement. On the February 6th of year 3785, the day the Frestac Chamber of Commerce's service center opened for business, even if it was heavily guarded, with almost all of Banta City's city guards being sent out. There were even quite a few elite soldiers wearing special armor among them, but the people of Banta City still moved out. Outside Banta City's old city, not far from the Sandy River, they completely surrounded the new Frestec Chamber of Commerce's service center that looked at Banta City's west gate. Everyone was trying their best to squeeze in, trying to personally witness the moment the new Flyer's service center reopened. For most people in Banta City, the new Flyer was synonymous with a rich life. When a new Flyer was in Banta City, everyone in Banta City lived rich and happy lives. But when the new Flyer was forced to leave Banta City was covered in a shadow, and most people's lives became worse and worse. Now that the new Flyer was back, their lives would definitely be better again. At 10 o'clock in the morning, the new Flyer Service Center was built with the new technology of the Amsterdam Chamber of Commerce. The highest point was over 30 meters from the ground, and it was divided into 7 floors. It was covered in a layer of marble that gave off a dignified and high-class aura when looking at it from afar. The doors finally opened. Seeing Sui walk out, the crowd immediately broke out in a deafening cheer. The sound was so loud that it spread all over Banta City, even creating ripples on the surface of the Sandy River in the distance. However, what surprised everyone was that after Sui came out and looked around, he turned around and made an inviting gesture. Everyone was stunned. Today was the opening day of the new Flyer Service Center, so of course the main character was Sui. Why did he make this gesture? However, when everyone saw the figure that came out of the door, they were stunned before erupting in cheers that were even louder than before. Your Majesty, it seems like you have a higher position in the hearts of these people. Seeing the excited and twisted faces of the crowd, Sui couldn't help saying this in an emotional voice. 70 looked at him. Of course, if my position in their hearts isn't as good, how could I be qualified to be the queen? Sui laughed. 70. I found that after you became the queen, you're much more domineering compared to before. 70 revealed a faint smile. When she was about to speak, an old man who looked like a minister beside 70 angrily glared at Sui. Chairman Sui, how dare you call Her Majesty by her name? Don't think that you can be this rude just because Her Majesty thinks highly of you. Sui looked at this old minister in surprise before looking at 70. 70 stuck out her tongue at Sui from where the old minister couldn't see. When she turned back to the old minister, she had already regained the dignity of a queen and shook her head with a faint smile. This is just Chairman Sui's slip of the tongue. Don't mind it. The old minister wanted to say something, but seeing 70 slightly knit her brows, he closed his mouth. Seeing the sharp gaze of the old minister looking at him, Sui gave a bitter laugh in his heart. Whether he was willing or not, whether 70 was willing or not, now that 70 was the queen of the Lampari Kingdom, their relationship couldn't be as pure and direct as before. Chapter 601. The opening of the new Flyer Service Center in Banta City meant that the new Flyer had officially returned to the Lampari Kingdom. Her Majesty 70 had taken time out of her busy schedule after her coronation to personally attend the opening of the service center, which meant that the Lampari Kingdom placed importance on the return of the new Flyer. According to the agreement between the new Flyer and the Lampari Kingdom, after the new Flyer returned to the Lampari Kingdom, the Lampari Kingdom would return all the industries that the 10 companies had taken from the new Flyer to the new Flyer. But when it came to implementation, it was inevitable that some of the Lampari Kingdom's network would be mixed into these industries. For example, the Falling Rain Valley was the core base of the new Flyer. Although it had been returned to the new Flyer, in the Falling Rain Valley, the Lampari Kingdom had set up a special administrative department in Banta City that was in charge of managing the administrative matters of the Falling Rain Valley and the surrounding areas. In name, this was to take care of the administrative matters of the Falling Rain Valley and the surrounding companies. It would make it easier for these companies to complete the necessary administrative procedures, saving time and energy. But in reality, this special administrative department had administrative rights over the Falling Rain Valley and the surrounding areas. This meant that whether it was the new flyer or the companies that came with the new flyer from the Black Rice Wasteland, they would also be managed by this administrative department. For the other companies, this change was still acceptable. But for the new flyer, the change was very clear. The Falling Rain Valley was Su Yi's private territory, so no matter how the new flyer changed the Falling Rain Valley, they had a large degree of freedom and autonomy in the Falling Rain Valley. But now that this administrative department had been set up, no matter what the new flyer wanted to do, they had to report it to the administrative department for approval. For example, in order to speed up production, Su Yi decided to build a steel mill in the Falling Rain Valley. But to build this steel mill, it had to be approved by Banta City's land department and a series of other approvals before it could be built. Even if the administrative department and Banta City took special care of the Xinfei Chamber of Commerce's approval process and approved it very quickly, it still took close to a month before it was approved. For Su Yi, this difference was very serious. Moreover, the approval time couldn't be set, so the new flyer's future plans would be affected to a certain extent. Naturally, their efficiency couldn't be compared to before. But these differences were within Su Yi's expectations, so he didn't have any objections. The most important thing was that his mentality was completely different from before. Before he was forced to leave the Lampuri Kingdom, he wanted to help the Lampuri Kingdom develop as quickly as possible, becoming a powerful magic machine industry country as soon as possible. Of course, even if he had had this idea, the Lampari had kingdom, the kingdom, the kingdom, the Lampari kingdom. This was because if the Lampari Kingdom became stronger, the magic machine industry would develop even faster on the continent. If the Lampari Kingdom became a super country like the Kanla Empire or the Malar Empire, or even the strongest country in the signs, the magic machine industry would definitely develop on the continent. At that time, Su Yi's dream of creating a complete magic machine industry on the continent would no longer be just a dream. However, since he was forced out of the Lampari Kingdom and found a new foundation in the Principality of Constantine, Su Yi's mentality couldn't help changing. For the current Su Yi, putting aside his feelings just from the perspective of the new flyer, the Lampari Kingdom was just a normal country on the continent. Compared to other countries, their biggest advantage was that they had a mature market and a magic machine industry. Other than this, in terms of potential, the Lampari Kingdom couldn't even compare to the Kingdom of Ruhr. Of course, the Lampari Kingdom's advantage over other countries quickly became apparent after the new flyer returned. The new flyer service center in Banta City had only been open for a week, but there were large amounts of orders flying in from all over the Lampari Kingdom. The people of the Lampari Kingdom hadn't been able to buy new flyers product for close to 2 years. During these 2 years, they had been tortured by the low-quality household magic machines from the 10 companies designated by the Magic Machine Industry Management Department. Now that the new flyer was finally back, it lit up the enthusiasm of everyone in the Lampari Kingdom. Hashtag. Everyone, please don't be in a rush and line up in order. Don't panic. The salesperson in the service center had a loudspeaker in his hand as he shouted in a hoarse voice, "Everyone, please don't worry. Everyone, please be at ease. Our Chamber of Commerce has already prepared enough goods for today's special sale. I guarantee that everyone will be able to buy what they want. Therefore, please maintain order and pay attention to the elderly and children around you. Don't let them get hurt." The service center's hall was only 1,000 square meters. It could be considered very spacious. However, the spacious hall was already packed with people, and there wasn't even a sliver of space to squeeze in. People raised the gold coins in their hands and ran to the various booths in the hall. Countless people crowded around the sales points under each booth. Everyone's face and eyes revealed different degrees of fanaticism, as if there was an intense holy war going on. That's right, for these people who were filled with desire for Xinfei's magic machines, today was the day of the Holy War. 3 days ago, the new flyer had published an advertisement in the Banta Times. In order to celebrate the return of the new flyer to Banta City, they would be holding a special sale at the new flyer's service center. In this special sale, Not only would the new flyer display the newest Xinfei brand household magic machines, they would also be selling them at a special price. Take the newest Xinfei brand magic air conditioner, for example. The normal price was 32 gold coins, but with today's special sale, the price would drop to 29 gold coins, 99 silver coins, and 99 copper coins. Although many people were doubtful about the price of the new flyer after the special sale, that didn't stop everyone from understanding that at this special sale, the newest Xinfei brand magic air conditioner would be sold for 2 gold coins less than the normal price. Adding in the fact that the other Xinfei brand household magic machines had different discounts, on the day of today's special sale, not only did the people of Banda City flock here, the people of the surrounding cities also came after hearing the news. Even when it was still dark, a large group of people were holding blankets and wearing coats, waiting at the entrance of the service center. When it was 8 in the morning, the service center officially opened for business. In the blink of an eye, it was filled with a wave of people. Compared to the waves of people on the first and second floors, there were much fewer people on the third floor. But this was also relative to the dense crowd on the first and second floors. In fact, this hall that also occupied an area of over 1,000 square meters was also packed with more than 200 people. At a glance, it was also densely packed. They were different from the normal customers downstairs. The people on the third floor were merchants from all over the Lampari Kingdom. With the new flyer returning to the Lampari Kingdom, the ones who were most sensitive to this were these merchants who had a keen sense of smell. When the new flyer was still in the Lampari Kingdom, these merchants had relied on the new flyer to earn quite a bit. Now that the new flyer was finally back, of course they had to come over as soon as possible. Chairman Su, based on how lively it is today, I'm afraid your new flyer will earn quite a bit today, right? A fat merchant said to Su Yi with a wide smile. Your words don't make sense. New flyer won't just earn a lot today. It will earn a lot every day, all right? Don't you think so, Chairman Su? Another merchant also said with a smile. That's enough. New flyer will definitely make money, but according to my understanding of Chairman Su, he doesn't really care about how much money he earns. What he cares about the most is how the people of our kingdom can use Xinfei brand household magic machines to change their lives, right? Yes, yes, yes. How could Chairman Su's goal be as vulgar as ours? Our minds are filled with how to earn more gold coins, while Chairman Su has always been thinking about how to improve people's lives. Otherwise, he wouldn't selflessly transfer those technologies. Don't you think so? Hearing the merchant change the topic to technology transfer, Su Yi revealed a smile. He waved his hand at him and said, No, you're overpraising me. I've always emphasized that I'm a merchant, and I even think that this identity is more important than the identity of a noble. I believe you should be very clear about this idea of mine. The merchants around Su Yi looked at each other and nodded. 2 years ago, when the royal parliament wanted to strip Su Yi of his noble status, Su Yi claimed that compared to his noble status, he valued his merchant status more, which shocked almost everyone. Since then, all the merchants in the Lampari Kingdom had a strong sense of identity with Su Yi. The status of merchants had always been very low in the signs. Now that Su Yi had suddenly appeared and announced that the identity of a merchant was more important than a noble, it undoubtedly gave all the merchants a shot of confidence. Looking at the excited expressions of the surrounding merchants, Su Yi smiled and continued. So, since I've always emphasized that I'm a merchant, then a merchant's primary goal is to make money. You say that I value improving people's lives more, but that's not accurate. We're all merchants, so there's no need to hide it. As a merchant, who doesn't want to make money? The surrounding merchants looked at each other and began to laugh at the same time. Of course, making money and improving people's lives aren't contradictory. I've earned money and people's lives have been improved because of our new flyer's products, so there isn't a conflict. Moreover, most of the money our new flyer earns has been invested into developing new products, which allows our company to keep releasing new products. Looking around, Su Yi's expression suddenly became serious. So, when transferring technology to others, I've always emphasized a problem. That is that it isn't hard to obtain the technology, but how to grasp the technology and develop it in depth is the key. If there is a company that can develop products like our new flyer, no matter what technology it is, our company can transfer it. Hearing the meaning in Su Yi's words, the eyes of the surrounding merchants lit up. A merchant hesitated a bit before carefully asking Su Yi, Chairman Su, then, are you willing to transfer the technology for the production magic machines? Chapter 602. I thought they would be a bit more daring. Su Yi shook his head with a smile. I was prepared that they would request to transfer the military magic machine technology, but I never thought that they wouldn't even mention it. Kennard raised his head and said with a smile, Sir Chairman, you're thinking too much. Not to mention transferring the military magic machine technology, even if you gave it to them for free, they wouldn't dare take it. What would they do with it? Are they planning on rebelling? Don't forget, the Lampari Kingdom has just experienced a civil war, so this is a very important matter. If they dare to ask you to transfer the military magic machine technology, do you believe that they won't be taken away by the palace guard tomorrow? Su Yi laughed. So you're saying that I can only wait for, say, Her Majesty the Queen to make this request to me? Pretty much. Kennard thought for a bit before slightly knitting his brows. During the New Year's, when I was still in Ambilmar City, the military already sent people to contact me and mention this matter. Sir Chairman, did no one come to ask for your opinion? No, even say, cough. Her Majesty the Queen didn't mention it to me. Su Yi shook his head. That's strange. Her Majesty the Queen should have fully experienced the power of the military magic machines during the Civil War. So why wasn't she moved by this technology? Kenner was a bit puzzled. I'm sure they were moved. The only reason they haven't mentioned it yet is because they aren't prepared yet. Su Yi said, Not prepared? What do they need to prepare? Kennard was even more puzzled. Su Yi smiled and thought that there were a lot of preparations that needed to be made. The first was the technical aspect. The military magic machine seemed like a single unit, but to make a complete military magic machine, even if it was relatively simple for the Frestac Chamber of Commerce and a magic repeating crossbow that didn't require much technology, it still wasn't that easy. This was because every single military magic machine was a complete mechanical replacement. The various components required a complete industrial system to support them. Without the support of New Flyer, the Lampari Kingdom would not be able to produce many of the most basic things, even though the magic industry seemed to be developing quite well. For example, steel. Although the 10 companies of the department had obtained quite a bit of household magic machine technology from the Frestac Chamber of Commerce, because the profits from the production magic machines were relatively low, they weren't that interested in them. In addition, Su Yi had intentionally concealed the information, so the Lampari Kingdom had never possessed the technology and foundation in this area. Although the previous 10 merchant guilds claimed to have grasped the production technology for almost all of the New Flyer's magic machines, they still had to rely on the New Flyer for many aspects of their production. In the past 2 years, even though New Flyer had left the Lampari Kingdom in name because of the ban of the department and the business department, there were many products that kept flowing into the Lampari Kingdom. Large amounts of steel was one of them. The most important of all was the chemical fertilizer that the business department and the magic industry department found a reason not to include in the ban. It could be said that without New Flyer, the Lampari Kingdom's so-called magic machine industry was like a castle in the air, having no meaning at all. Perhaps the Lampari Kingdom was very interested in the military magic machine technology that New Flyer had, but before this, the Lampari Kingdom had to establish their own industrial base first. Looking at it from this angle, those merchants wanting the Frestac Chamber of Commerce to transfer the production magic machine technology to them was actually a very practical idea. Su Yi wasn't planning on completely dominating the Lampari Kingdom's magic machine industry. Not to mention that this was something that was impossible. Even if Seveny had a good relationship with him, the Lampari Kingdom definitely wouldn't allow this to happen. So in a controlled situation, Su Yi decided to give the Lampari Kingdom a part of the production magic machine technology, helping the Lampari Kingdom establish a relatively complete magic machine industry base. At least, They wouldn't need to buy a bunch of necessities from New Flyer just to make a magic repeating crossbow. So when the merchants mentioned that they wanted to transfer the production magic machine technology, Sui revealed a hint of loosening his mouth. The merchants could smell this, and they all surrounded him like sharks that had smelled blood. After a simple discussion, Sui finally announced to the merchants that he would be transferring the production magic machine technology to them. Specifically speaking, the Ireland Chamber of Commerce that was the most outstanding in the component processing industry was the Ireland Chamber of Commerce. Although they excelled in component processing, and there were some parts that weren't as good as New Flyer's, all the production magic machines they used to make components were all bought from New Flyer. If New Flyer cut off their supply of production magic machines, the Ireland Chamber of Commerce would be paralyzed. What Sui was planning on transferring to the other companies was the production magic machine technology. The technology in this area wasn't as simple as the production of household magic machines because the main problem wasn't the technology, but the lack of skilled workers. Because the Frestech Chamber of Commerce had a large number of dwarven craftsmen, with the talent of the dwarven craftsmen in casting iron, adding in the fact that these dwarven craftsmen had grown up with the Frestech Chamber of Commerce. The Frestech Chamber of Commerce didn't have this problem. But if a new company wanted to make production magic machines, other than the hard requirements of the technology, it was hard to solve the problem of skilled workers. Sui had clearly explained this problem to the merchants who needed the production magic machine technology, but the only response he got was helplessness. Although the dwarves of the signs weren't as rare as the elves, there were very few dwarven craftsmen who were willing to work for humans. The reason why New Flyer had these dwarven craftsmen working for them was completely a coincidence. If the other companies wanted to imitate them, it was impossible for them to do so. But Sui was already prepared for this, and he had given these merchants two solutions. The first solution was to find dwarven craftsmen from the Lampari Kingdom, or even other places on the continent, and try to recruit them. Sui said that he could help with this. Because there were many dwarven craftsmen in New Flyer, having these dwarves persuade their compatriots would increase the chances of them agreeing. But this solution could only solve the problem for a while because the number of dwarves was limited, so it was impossible for them to meet the demand for large amounts of manpower. So Sui proposed the second solution, which was the one he strongly recommended. This plan was based on Sui's plan from before, but because of the changes in the Lampari Kingdom, he was forced to stop the vocational training school plan. The content of this plan was to create a large number of vocational training schools in the Lampari Kingdom, specially teaching students vocational skills. For example, in the vocational skills school that Sui had set up in the Lampari Kingdom, there was a school for milling, a school for turning, and other schools for training. After receiving enough basic vocational training in these schools, they would enter the company for a period of time, and they would have enough skilled workers. The most important part of this plan was that it was a system that could be developed for a long time. As time passed, groups of skilled workers would appear, and the skills of these workers would also increase over time. After maintaining this system for a while, the Lampari Kingdom would have enough human resources. They would have the possibility of relying on themselves to produce and develop production magic machines. Of course, if the other companies wanted to try making their own production magic machines, it wasn't impossible. Take the most important machine for producing screw bolts, the small magic thread rolling machine. The fixed price was 800,000 gold coins. Contrary to Sui's expectations, although the expressions of all the merchants changed when they heard the price of 800,000 gold coins, in the end, there were still 37 people who wanted to transfer the technology to him. This meant that just by transferring the technology for the small magic thread rolling machine, New Flyer could earn a terrifying profit of over 20 million gold coins. If Sui was willing to transfer all the technology for the production magic machines, this profit would be unimaginable. Of course, this was also impossible. It wasn't a problem to transfer a part of the technology, but if he transferred it all, it was equal to breaking his own hands and feet. Sui naturally wouldn't do something this stupid. Shaking his head to throw away these unrealistic thoughts, Sui looked at Kennard, who was buried in a pile of documents, and Seabass, who was calculating on the side. How is it? How was your harvest today? Seabass looked up with a red glow on his face and an excited look on his face. Sir Chairman, up to now, in just an hour, we've already received 7,393 orders for magic air conditioners, 8,349 orders for magic refrigerators, 23,235 orders for magic stoves, 15,978 orders for magic kettles, and 48,323 orders for magic lamps. Tell me the total. He waved his hand and cut him off. Seabass paused and looked down. He swallowed a mouthful of saliva before replying. Sir Chairman, just this morning, we've already earned over 1 million gold coins. Even if they were already prepared for this number, when they heard it, Kennard and the other new flyer staff couldn't help taking a gasp. For most companies in the Lampari Kingdom, if they could earn over 1 million gold coins a year, they could already be considered a large company. But now the Frestech Chamber of Commerce had used just a single morning to achieve this kind of sales. Even if because of the special price, the overall profit had decreased, the Frestech Chamber of Commerce's products always had a high profit margin. So of this 1 million gold coins in sales, the Frestech Chamber of Commerce had a net profit of at least 300,000 gold coins, earning over 300,000 gold coins in a single morning. What kind of terrifying concept was this? Including Kennard and Seabass, everyone revealed looks of excitement that couldn't be suppressed. He revealed a faint smile. Although he was also a bit happy, he wasn't that excited. On Earth, there was a terrifying record of 10 billion in sales in a single day. 10 billion was equal to 100 million gold coins, and the Frestech Chamber of Commerce was still far from this goal. Chapter 603. The Lampari Kingdom's situation gradually stabilized, and under the wise leadership of Her Majesty 70, the entire kingdom kept moving forward in a more prosperous direction. The Principality of Constantine's situation was the exact opposite. After signing an armistice with Sui, although Count Wine had lost close to 600 square kilometers of territory, he had also given up a lot of initiative. For example, the factory that he had more control over was now completely controlled by New Flyer. But Sui's promise to him had actually helped him even more. Because New Flyer gave him enough military magic machines, Count Wine had an absolute advantage in equipment in his battles with the other lords. Even if it didn't completely crush them like before, what decided the outcome of the battles between the lords of the Principality of Constantine was who had more military magic machines. Count Wine had the support of New Flyer, so he naturally had an advantage over the other lords. Thus, since the new year, Lord Wine and the alliance of the 4 lords that repelled him broke out in a series of battles and won a series of victories. Through these victories, Count Wine had used only 3 months to completely crush the resistance of the 4 lords. Count Wine seized this chance to take most of the territories of the 4 lords, becoming the strongest lord in the north of the Stantine Duchy. There was no one who could compare to him. At the same time, the southern Principality of Constantine had fallen into chaos. Anklo, who had been steadily expanding the year before, began to expand wildly as soon as they entered the year 3875 of the continental calendar. Because he had the support of New Flyer, Anklo's army was invincible in the southern Principality of Constantine, and no one could stop them. In less than 4 months, he had transformed from a small feudal lord who only owned one city, had a force of 5,000 men, and occupied an area of less than 1,000 square kilometers to a great feudal lord who owned 5 cities, had over 20,000 men, and occupied an area of more than 10,000 square kilometers. In the Principality of Constantine, Anklo and Count Wine had become the most powerful lords in the north and south. Everyone believed that a life and death battle would erupt between these 2 lords. The reason why these 2 lords were invincible in the kingdom was because they had the support of the Frestech Chamber of Commerce. But if they were to start a war, who would emerge victorious? When most people thought of this question, they would immediately have an answer in their hearts. Whoever the Frestech Chamber of Commerce supported the most, they would win. Then who would New Flyer support? Sue, he didn't have time to consider who he would support in the end. After the new year, he immediately became busy with work and didn't have time to think about other things. After obtaining 600 square kilometers of territory from Count Wine, his private territory had expanded by dozens of times. But if he wanted to fully control this territory, there were too many things that needed to be done. After careful consideration, Su-yi gave up on the idea of making this new territory the same as his previous one, because to achieve this effect, he would need to invest an astronomical amount of money. With New Flyer's current strength, they couldn't do it for the time being, and there was no need to do so. After obtaining this territory, the first thing Su-yi did was to count the population. The final statistics showed that there were only 30,000 people in this territory of 600 square kilometers. Moreover, among these 30,000 people, there were less than 1,000 young men between the ages of 16 to 40. In fact, there weren't so few young men in this territory before, but Count Wine had been fighting with other lords for a long time, so all the young men in this territory were transferred away. The fact that there were close to 1,000 people left was already a very good situation. Fortunately, Su-yi's current manpower was mainly concentrated on the workers in the factories who were responsible for simple mechanical operations, so he wasn't limited to young men. After counting the population, Su-yi gathered all the people who had the ability to work and carried out a unified training. In the end, he picked out a total of 19,000 people to enter the factories under New Flyer's name, taking on the simplest mechanical work in these factories. Although these natives of the Principality of Constantine had always been lazy, under Su-yi's mandatory training, they had more or less developed some discipline. In addition, Su-yi's identity as a lord had a deterrent effect on them, so they could basically complete their work in the factories obediently. Not to mention that it was different from when they were under Count Wine's name. Although they were forced to work in these factories by Su-yi, the Frestec Chamber of Commerce would still give them a corresponding wage and benefits. Even if they could only do simple mechanical work and their wages were a bit lower than other workers, with a minimum of 5 gold coins a month and a series of benefits that they had never thought of before, the citizens of the Stantine Duchy, who had been poor their entire lives, were very happy. Now that these workers' enthusiasm for work was extremely high, their work efficiency also rapidly increased. Because these workers took on large amounts of simple mechanical operations, it freed up the skilled workers in the New Flyer factories, greatly increasing the production capacity of each factory. At the same time, New Flyer invested in a series of new factories in the first few months of the new year. As long as these factories were built and the production lines were put into use, New Flyer's production capacity would definitely soar. According to the plan, in the second half of the year, New Flyer's production capacity would double or even surpass before. Like this, the production capacity problem that always troubled New Flyer would be greatly alleviated. Of course, to completely solve this problem, it wasn't enough to just invest money and manpower. In Su-yi's opinion, the best method was to increase the technology. Sir Chairman, look, this is our group's newly developed automatic control magic lathe. Sanchely pointed at the strange-looking machine in front of him with an excited look. Sanchely pointed at the strange machine in front of him. As long as you put the steel plate in and set the processing data ahead of time, it will automatically process the steel plate into the shape you want. After the introduction, Sanchely had 2 workers place a steel plate that was 1 meter and 80 centimeters long, 80 centimeters wide, and 7 millimeters thick into the magic lathe's processing slot. Then he pressed a few buttons on a square that was like a control panel. The magic lathe roared and sent the steel plate into the processing arm of the lathe. Then the steel plate went in and out, moving up and down. After a while, it had already been processed into an irregular trapezoid shape. This steel plate was a very important component for making the medium-sized magic excavator. If they wanted to process this component before, it would take at least 2 skilled workers to operate the magic lathe, and it would take them half an hour to complete. But now the automatic control magic lathe only needed to put in the steel plate and didn't need any other workers. The entire process took less than 5 minutes. Compared to this, the efficiency was without a doubt heaven and earth. Su-yi looked at the finished steel plate, and his heart was filled with shock. Although this automatic control magic lathe looked very simple, its functions were actually this strong. Being able to set the data ahead of time to process the components, this was already the standard of a CNC machine. The machine tool research on Earth had lasted for several decades before the true CNC machine tool appeared because of the development of computer technology. This Sanchely had actually developed something similar to a CNC machine tool without any computer technology on the Signs continent. This was simply too great. He couldn't help the joy in his heart as he laughed. He patted Sanchely's shoulder with an excited look on his face. When this fellow was picked up from Anvilmar City, he only liked his special ability to program magic, hoping that he would have some results in this area. But he never thought that after Sanchely had been silent for 2 years, he would actually develop this kind of shocking thing. Very good. Sanchely, great. He patted Sanchely's shoulder with a wide smile. This automatic control magic lathe, it could be considered our company's most important invention this year. No, it should be the most important invention in the past few years. Its appearance would even change the entire appearance of the magic machine industry. Sanchely, as the chairman, I am giving you a first-level reward. It's actually a first-level reward. God, a first-level reward. It's been a long time since someone has received a first-level reward, right? It's not that long. It's that no one has received one at all. The surrounding people all revealed shocked looks. Although they knew that the automatic control magic lathe Sanchely had developed this time was very strong, no one thought that Sir Chairman would place such importance on this thing. He would even give Sanchely a first-level reward that no one in New Flyer had ever received before. Sanchely's face was red with excitement, and he was so excited that he couldn't speak. He just kept nodding. His heart had always been filled with gratitude towards Sue-Yi, as well as a strong sense of guilt. He was grateful because Sue-Yi had pulled him out of the lowest valley of his life and realized his dreams. He had given him this kind of relaxed environment that allowed him to do the things he liked to do. He felt guilty because after all this time, he had given Sue-Yi very little in return. Now that he saw that Sue-Yi was this satisfied with the automatic control magic lathe and even gave a first-level reward, Sanchely was naturally very excited. He didn't have Sue-Yi take back this reward because he was very clear that with Sue-Yi's personality, since he had already said it, he definitely wouldn't take it back. The more important thing was that this rare first-level reward was the best proof of his contributions to New Flyer. This would reduce the guilt he felt towards Sue-Yi. However, whether it was the surrounding workers or Sanchely, they weren't as excited as Sue-Yi. He who had transmigrated from Earth knew better than anyone what this machine represented. If the entire Frestech Chamber of Commerce could be like the factories on Earth, fully automating production, the Frestech Chamber of Commerce's production capacity problem would be solved. Although this automatic control magic lathe was just the beginning, as long as it took this first step, he believed that New Flyer would firmly continue down this path. Chapter 604. During this time, Old Man Aphelia's heart had been filled with contradictions. Properly speaking, he was someone born and raised in Bana City. Even if he was working for the New Flyer in the Principality of Constantine, he would still have to return his roots and return to Banta City for the rest of his life. This idea was a bit impractical when the Lampari kingdom was in chaos, so Old Man Aphalia had always suppressed this idea in his heart. But since Her Majesty 70's coronation last year, the Lampuri kingdom's situation became better with each passing day. The news from Bana City also became better with each passing day, so Old Man Aphelia's heart, that had been dead, once again became lively. He was born in Bana City and had lived in Bana City for close to 50 years, so if he died in another place, he would feel a bit uncomfortable. Now that Banta City's situation was good, the New Flyer and the other companies that had left Bana City had all returned to Bana City. They had reopened various factories and stores in Bana City, making Banta City prosperous bit by bit. It was very likely that it would become as prosperous as before. There were also many jobs in Bana City, so if he went back, it definitely wouldn't be a problem to find a suitable job. Even if the income from this job couldn't compare to working here, it was still his homeland and there were many relatives and friends there. But whether it was his wife, his son Archie, or his daughter-in-law Leia, they all opposed this idea of his. According to his wife, their family had already lived here for several years and had already adapted to living here. Moreover, they liked the relaxed and happy life here very much. Moreover, if they lived here, their family had their own jobs in the New Flyer. Old man Ophelia and his wife had taken over 100 mu of farmland under the Shinfei farm. Just by farming for the New Flyer each year, they earn a net income of over 300 gold coins. If they returned to Bana City, the two of them didn't have any specialties other than farming. Even if they could easily find a job in Bana City, at most they could find a simple job that wouldn't earn more than 10 gold coins a month. Compared to now, it would be less than 100 gold coins a year. Other than that, Archie and Leia were now skilled workers in the Frestek Chamber of Commerce's factories. Archie had worked hard and had become a second-grade lathe worker and a second-grade mill worker. He was considered a high-level worker in the Frestek Chamber of Commerce's bicycle factory, earning a high wage of 23 gold coins a month. Adding in the various bonuses and benefits, his annual income could reach 300 gold coins. Although Leia was a bit worse than him, she was the leader of the household magic machine workshop under New Flyer. Her monthly salary was 20 gold coins a month, and adding in her bonuses, her annual income was over 200 gold coins. If they gave up their current lives and returned to Bana City, even if they could find a good job with their skills and work experience, with even a higher salary, Archie and Leia both believed that instead of earning a higher salary in those unknown small companies, it was better to continue working in New Flyer. Compared to the other companies, New Flyer's prospects were without a doubt the best. Moreover, New Flyer had a very clear promotion system. As long as you were willing to work hard, as you worked longer in New Flyer, your salary would also increase. Moreover, New Flyer had an advantage that the other companies couldn't compare to, which was the various benefits they had. The most simple one was that if you worked in New Flyer until you reached retirement age, you would receive a pension that corresponded to your working age. This pension system, other than New Flyer, there was no other company like it. Then there were the other benefits that people envied. For example, they would receive daily necessities during festivals, they would receive paid vacations each year, and each employee would receive free treatment each year. If it was the same salary, there was no doubt that working in New Flyer was much more advantageous. There were even many New Flyer workers who said in private that even if other companies gave them double the salary, they wouldn't consider changing jobs. Working at the Frestek Chamber of Commerce was much more comfortable than working at other companies. So based on both practical and long-term plans, Archie and Leia didn't consider leaving New Flyer and returning to Bana City to find work. Old man Ophelia saw that he couldn't convince them, so he tried to convince them that after New Flyer returned to the Lampari Kingdom, they would definitely build many factories in the Lampari Kingdom and recruit large amounts of workers. But facts mercilessly shattered old man Ophelia's fantasies. According to the Lampuri Weekly and the Bana Times, the Frestek Chamber of Commerce had signed a full cooperation agreement with the Lampuri Kingdom. The Frestek Chamber of Commerce will be investing in large amounts of magic machine factories in the Lampuri Kingdom. This wasn't surprising at all. What was surprising was that according to the information that was leaked, among the factories that New Flyer and the Lampari Kingdom built, the Lampari Kingdom took the lead. New Flyer only provided technical support and received a share of the profits. As for controlling these factories, New Flyer didn't have any control at all. In other words, whether it was in name or in reality, these companies all belonged to the Lampari Kingdom and weren't that related to New Flyer at all. If one worked in these factories, they would receive the same salary as the Lampari Chamber of Commerce that invested in these factories with New Flyer. It wouldn't be related to New Flyer. Other than these joint ventures, according to the agreement, New Flyer wouldn't build factories in the Lampari Kingdom. So if they returned to the Lampari Kingdom, they could only leave New Flyer no matter what. Because of this news, Old Man Aphelia's final hope of convincing his family was shattered. So Old Man Aphelia's heart was filled with contradictions. He really wanted to return to Banda City. To him, it wasn't that important how much money he earned. Moreover, they had already earned quite a bit of money working for New Flyer over the years. Just him and his wife alone had accumulated more than 500 gold coins over the past few years. Although Archie and Leia had spent quite a bit because they had given birth to a fat kid, they still earned close to 1,000 gold coins with their high salaries and benefits. With this money, even if they returned to Banda City and didn't do anything, it would be enough for them to live happily for the rest of their lives. It had to be known, when they were farming in their hometown, their annual income couldn't even fill their stomachs, but didn't they still live like this? Of course, Old Man Aphalia knew that if he said this at home, his wife wouldn't hesitate to refute him. The past was the past. The present was the present. Now that they were eating well, sleeping well, wearing good clothes, working well, and earning a high income, why did they have to return to Banda City to live a bad life where they couldn't even fill their stomachs? Although they didn't say it, seeing the clear meaning on their faces, Old Man Aphalia was speechless. Everything is good here, but we don't have any family. Old Man Aphalia felt a bit indignant. Although there were many people in Banda City who had moved to the Stantine Duchy with the Fresteck Chamber of Commerce, Old Man Aphalia's family in Banda City only had his wife, son, and daughter-in-law who had come with them. They had made quite a few new friends over the years, but they were different from blood relatives. Even if there were roads and magic cars, it wouldn't take long to return to Banda City, but it was still different from living together. Because it was past the busiest time of the spring harvest, there wasn't much to do in the fields during this time. Old Man Aphalia would go out for a stroll after eating lunch every day. Other than helping with digestion, he didn't want to stay at home and argue with his wife over this matter. It had to be said, after the New Flyer came here for a few years, they had already turned this land that wasn't barren, but was still very messy, into a clean and beautiful place. Under the guidance of Su Yi's beautiful living concept, the elf had worked hard on transforming this land for several years. Now, other than the roads that made it very convenient to travel on Su Yi's territory, the entire territory was organized in a neat manner without a trace of chaos. Because Su Yi had set up an environmental health department, he had hired a large number of local residents of the Principality of Constantine to clean up his territory. So his territory was always very clean. As long as anyone came to this territory, they couldn't help giving a sigh. Such a place was simply like the legendary paradise. This was one of the important reasons why his wife, Archie, and Leia were against leaving this place. The living environment here, even if they searched the entire signs, they wouldn't be able to find a better place, so why would they leave this place? Even Old Man Aphalia agreed with this in his heart, making it very hard for him to make the decision to leave this territory. Looking up at the beautiful and clean environment, Old Man Aphalia took a deep breath and felt that the air was very charming. This was also the work of the elves, but it was also because of Chairman Su's insistence. It said that in order to maintain this environment, New Flyer invested over 1 million gold coins in the beginning and invested over 100,000 gold coins each year. Other than New Flyer, there was no other company, or rather there was no lord that would spend this much money on the environment of their territory. The Fresteck Chamber of Commerce is a good company, and Chairman Su is the best chairman and lord, but there are no relatives here in the end. Aphalia shook his head with a bitter smile. Old Man Aphalia shook his head with a bitter smile. If those relatives in Banda City could move here, that would be great. This thought had already appeared in Old Man Aphalia's mind countless times, but he was very clear that this was just an extravagant hope. So after this idea appeared, he could only helplessly shake his head and give a sigh. However, after he shook his head, he found that there were many medium-sized passenger magic cars quickly driving over. After entering the gates of a Shinfei farm, these medium-sized passenger magic cars slowly came to a stop. A person jumped out of the first magic car. Old Man Aphalia looked over and was stunned. It can't be. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.